you'll hear from the audience. You'll have 3 minutes. Where, Mr. Reeves, are we doing it now? Okay, so you go to the podium and you'll speak. You'll have 3 minutes. Please observe the code of conduct and the rules of order, and we'll have no problems. Item number 1 is to discuss the public records policy revisions. There's nothing next to it for a name, which means that it was brought by the city manager. I turn it over to Lynn Reeves.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, this was brought after some discussion, additionally with the city attorney to clarify some issues in the policy. And it's just actually section 4 was modified, and the city attorney reviewed it and made the changes. And this is just for you to review and make any comments you want to make for the city attorney.
Did he author this, or did he review it?
He redid it.
He authored it, okay. Okay, council? Comments? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I think this is just filling some of the gaps from the previous public records policy. At least I support it.
I have a couple of comments. I noticed that we're not charging for facsimile delivery costs. I think we should. I think there should be a fee for that, because if it's multiple pages, it's going to take some time for someone to fax something and scan it, so there should be a charge for that. The other thing is, I didn't see anything specific where if there's a public records request that the person who it involves, whether it's a council member or a staff member, doesn't necessarily need to be notified by the clerk, and I want to make sure that we have it covered in here. I didn't see it, I may have missed it, but I think that and whatever is handed over to the requestor should also be copied to the person involved in the action.
So you're asking for just to add something that says that if public records request is made, that we notify whoever it's responsible to.
Right, and I think before the redacted copy goes out to the requester, that the person whose emails you're sending should have an opportunity to review it and make sure that there wasn't something overlooked. And we don't really have that. There's nothing in here that says, you know, if the request was made for my emails, based on this policy, Patty could respond to the requester, send them some information that might include something that I might want redacted, and we might have to talk about it and discuss it. You know, I know clearly she'll go through it and redact those things that need to be, but if there's something that slips by, I think it makes sense that we have an opportunity to look at those things before it goes out.
We'll talk to the city attorney a little further to clarify that. But we can and can't do. You know, I don't know that there's anything that prevents us from telling you that somebody made a records request. I don't know that if it's a public record, unless you meet certain criteria, that we can redact anything. Unless you meet
Well, it
certain.
clearly states in the policy that we can.
Well,
I mean, there's certain items that may not be pertinent, that may, might be something as simple as a reprimand to you that is not public record, or something about your pay scale, or something that is not public. That's not a good example, but I'm just saying,
It's
there
public record.
could be something in there and that's the whole point of having that redaction option in this policy.
And I'll speak to Fred further about that.
Yeah, I agree with Jody. If you look through the Sunshine Law and the public records, there are definite exclusions to the public records. I mean, law enforcement, you can't give them addresses and that sort of stuff. So it only makes sense that any interested party should be part of the vetting process before it's released. If nothing else, allow the interested party to raise a question or an issue to be cleared through the city attorney or against the policies. That makes sense. I agree with that.
And we'll add the facts in there.
Yeah,
Just-
I mean, I think anything that we provide, we should charge for. You know, It takes Patty away from her normal duties, and she's spending a lot of time on these public record requests, so.
So the reasonable, time for production, reasonable, plainly states to review it for exempt information. If you needed to put something in there, basically it just should say the party involved should have the opportunity or something. I would say that time for production, this statement pretty much takes care of what you're asking for, the time to review it.
But this is just for your feedback tonight, because we'll revise it and then bring it to the next council meeting.
Is Mr. Riley going to be here tonight?
No, he had a commitment with Haines City, and he said if we needed to, we could call him.
I would like him to prepare a legal memo in proper form to me and to the rest of the council, providing the statutory authority for some of these items that have been proposed. And, you know, I'm not so sure there is statutory authority, and I want to see where he's coming from with it.
Okay.
Okay? Any other comments from the council before I open it up to the floor? Seeing none, I'll open up to the floor. Does anyone wish to speak? Mr. Hansick.
John Hansick, 103 22nd Street. Mr. Mayor, council members, at the last regular council meeting, I brought up my concerns regarding the email issue and the public records issue, and it made a suggestion that it needed to be changed. And I see here that in this revision, under paragraph or section 4.4 email, I reviewed all of this. I concur with the accountability, if you will, that's written in here as revised, and whatever other revisions you're discussing. My recommendation based on this is that you should, as a council, approve this change going forward. And again, if I may reiterate, when Finance Committee had its first meeting, organizational meeting, we were emphatically instructed on how to communicate amongst ourselves, committee persons, to discuss matters of the committee and the finances of the city. And that we were to submit it through the city clerk so that the city had a record, and we as individuals would not or could not be held responsible, since we were working on behalf of the city. And I would think that in every case, everybody who has done business on behalf of the city had the same sunshine law information and the information contained here, that you're doing stuff for the city, it should go through the city, not through personal stuff. And we wouldn't be in this boat again. But I encourage you all to approve these changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council, any last comments? Mr. Reeves, you'll take the comments then to Fred Riley and get some a revision here. Thank you. Okay, next is to discuss the charter amendments. That's
Mayor?
also.
Sorry, can I just interrupt real quick?
Yes,
I noticed walking in, there's a sign saying that we need to wear face masks.
Yes.
Is there a reason why not everybody has one on? Just my medical opinion. Is it mandatory to be in this building and have a face mask?
City Manager.
We're asking the public to wear face masks when they come in the building.
I'm just thinking because the incidences of cases are rising, the hospital admissions are rising that are positive, so it is out there, and so I think we all need to set a good example. Like I said before, my concern is that there is a insurgence of patients, and we can tied back to this meeting, that's very bad publicity. So I just ask everybody to wear a face mask.
Can I inject something on that?
Mhm.
Is it face mask everywhere, or is it face mask if you are unable to socially distance?
Face mask everywhere.
I think it says required to enter the building. I don't think it says anything about wearing it if you're socially distanced. The other thing I would bring up is, I'd be happy to wear a face mask, but perception-wise, what is it like to arrive at a public meeting wearing scrubs?
Okay, I'm going to call a point of order now, all right? There's a pandemic, 1, 2, 3, 4 people not wearing face masks, 5. I mean, it's like half the room.
Well, I am not going to wear one, so I'm just leaving it at that. It's my option. There's no, first off, there's no law and you can't force me to. I'm not going to wear a face mask. So if you would like me to leave the building, I'll be happy
What's
to.
the building's
But
policy, Mr. Reeves?
do not
We're just, what we've got on the door, we can't enforce that.
Okay, so it's optional. So that's the answer to the question, Dr. Aki. So unfortunately, it's optional. Okay, so we'll keep it as optional. Thank you.
Well, then I think since we're going to be like that, let's make it for the record that Vice Mayor Gunn, Dave Gaddis, and Jody Shirley are not currently wearing a face mask, just in case it comes back, we all know.
So noted. Thank you.
I don't think that needs to be in the record because there are no laws that say I need to wear a face mask. And if it's in the record, I'll leave. And you can give me an excused absence. But I am not wearing a face mask and that does not need to go in the record. That's ridiculous.
So are a lot of things, hence Vice Mayor Gunn's comment on my attire. Would you like to comment on my job and what I do every day as well? And my sacrifices I have made while you guys have been staying home, social distancing at home, and I've been going in every day, putting my life on the line? And remember,
I'd like to call a point of order, please.
I'm going to find it well-founded at this point. I'm going to terminate the discussion. I think the points have been made. You have a building policy that is optional, so anyone can come in the building with or without it. It's suggested, it's not required. It's probably not a good idea to not have a face mask, but that's my opinion, but we'll allow you. So let's move on to number 3.
Mayor,
Yes.
one more thing. If it would make Councilmember Aki feel better, I'll be more than happy to swap places with him.
I'm not worried about me. If I was worried about me, I wouldn't go to work every day. I'm worried about everyone else. It's called social distancing. There's reasons for face masks. There's reason for the precaution. There's reasons why at Publix nobody's wearing them anymore.
Right,
There's
of
reasons
course.
why you.
Mayor, stop.
Again, I've stopped the conversation. Let's move on, okay? Your points, your plan of mask was in the record, and we've noted it, and that's where we're at right now. Maybe that's why Florida set the record for 3 days straight for highest COVID cases. Discuss seawall, charter amendments, number 2. City manager.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, Fred had sent this to Patty and I, and when we had the last meeting, it wasn't cleaned up. And one of the changes that the Charter Review Committee has recommended wasn't in here, so we added that. And what I'm asking tonight, if you've got any other changes, we can get this revised and cleaned up. But at some point, to make sure we meet the deadlines, we're going to have a special meeting for the first reading at least. And then we can at least start the process of getting it translated and things of that nature. So, if anyone has any comments, that's what we need to know.
Council.
I would like to go ahead and ask, when this is put on the ballot, what is the dollar amount per question that is charged to the citizens? Is there one?
I believe for this election, it's like $1,400
Per question.
no, for the ballot total. It's not by question.
Okay. Now,
That's the number you got, wasn't it, Patty, somewhere? in there?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah.
so now my next thing that I want to ask about is we are still planning on reaching out to the community to see what they want to see on there. Is that correct? Because we were, Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn had suggested that we reach out to see what the community wanted to see on there or not, or have discussions with them. Is that still the case?
I think the issue I raised was to ensure that the way the question is presented on the ballot is easily comprehensible to whoever reads it when they come in to vote. And when I pulled out just the questions, tabulated all 5 questions, I gave it to the city manager just to route through his staff to have his people look at it and say, okay, yeah, I understand that, I understand that. And questions 4 and 5 came back. Question 4, the 3 people he gave it to look at said, no, we don't understand what's being asked here. And on question number 5, 2 out of the 3 people said, I don't understand what the question is asking. So it wasn't so much looking for a group to give us feedback necessarily on which of those 5 items should be, because I think the Charter Review Committee basically decided these are the most important issues. But it was just to ensure that when those 5 questions hit the ballot, anybody can walk in, pick it up and read it and say, okay, I understand clearly what is being asked without a description or any kind of background information. So I don't know where that went. You've added back in question number 1 regarding the strategic plan.
And then the other 4 questions are,
They weren't changed or anything.
we asked Fred to look at those, and we passed on the information, and this is what he sent us back. So that's why I want to get feedback from you so we can clean this up. And this, because of the pandemic, our timeline is kind of crunched up. And if we don't make the November election, then we would have to wait till March, and that's kind of where it's at right now, because this has to be translated to Spanish, and there has to be 2 readings. And
This was given with ample time to get it done, and I gotta say, I'm a little disgusted that it's taking so long. I read through this, and I'm not gonna lay out what's missing. Then the city attorney needs to go back and take a look at what the recommendations, the 1A recommendations that came out of our council our session was, and he needs to make sure that every one of them are integrated in here, and I can tell you that they're not. Okay? One that's near and dear to my heart isn't here. So they need to go through this and make sure that it's comprehensive. That's number 1. Number 2, translating into Spanish doesn't mean go get in your neighbor who might speak Spanish.
No.
This is a complicated process, and we need to allow time. And I have given the deadline, and I'm going to give it again. It's August, and I believe it's August 17th to hit the presidential 11th. Okay, to hit the presidential election. And we gave it to him, I think, with 3 or 4 months to go. Now, to the point of the comments, that the citizen's supposed to be making comments, I think we got this all wrong. It's the attorney who's supposed to be dissecting it to make sure that it's going to be clear for everyone. He needs to read it like a lawyer and read it like a citizen, so that any citizen, and this can withstand a legal challenge. We don't have to go any further than the firemen a couple of years ago who had an improper ballot initiative and lost their entire initiative because somebody challenged it afterward. So it's his job to make sure it's clear. We don't go out and survey the citizens and say, hey, what do you think? I mean, it's not a bad idea. I don't think it is. But that's not the way it's supposed to be done. He has to read it. And I'll give you something that I find to be, I can't understand it, and I was on the Charter Review Committee. When does this stuff take effect? Because it doesn't say. Okay, for example, it talks about somebody losing their position on council for 4 absences. It was never the intention, I'll say that again clearly, it was never the intention of the people on the Charter Review Committee to affect anybody who was on this council right now, even if they had 4 absences. This is supposed to be go forward. It's not in here. So I don't know it, and I was on the committee, so I can't imagine voters know it. So I want to say, I think this really needs some heavy work, and it needs to be done quickly, and we better hit the presidential election, because I'm not going to be pleased when we turn it over to somebody 4 months early, and we still blow the deadline. That's just unacceptable to me. I don't know about the rest of the council. Council? Citizens? Last word of council.
Mayor, do you want to send some things that we can
No.
incorporate?
I want him to do it. I want him to take, like what I did here, this, these drafts that we got. This happened to be one of the notes that we had
Right,
at the
right.
meetings. So
He
take
has
that and check it back and forth against what he's doing, because I think he's missed some stuff, and I think he's kind of truncated some of the policies that we wanted. And he's got literary license to make it fit right for the voters. We kind of gave him, here's what we're looking to do.
Right.
But he needs to make it clear, okay? Example, it talks about term limits, okay? This is a big thing. Well, when does it start? There's some people coming up on their second term. Does that mean they can't run again? I think what we meant was go forward. That's what I thought, at least. Jody's nodding, you know, and Robin's nodding, and everybody here was on this thing. So we never talked about trying to knock anyone out that was here now. This is supposed to start today. So actually, you know, let's say somebody, you know, but when does it start? I don't know. Day after the election? January 1st? I don't know. I don't know. Voters.
I think charter changes do start after the election.
Okay.
That's pretty normal. It's kind of like, what, 12, 14 years ago when we did the city manager. It took X amount of months to do that, and there was, you know, it's a time certain, so I don't think, I will ask for
Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking because Glenn Gunn, Jody Shirley, and Mark Beam are running, you know, maybe running, they're up for election. So if they get reelected, are they termed out, or do they get one more after that? Is it 2 after we pass this, or 2? Oh,
I don't think,
I don't know.
I'll ask Fred that question.
Yeah, I think that has to be clear to the voters. That matters. It really does. He's got to get on this, okay? Really.
Main City has taken a lot of.
I understand, but you know what? He's city attorney for Bel Air Beach also,
I know that.
and I need this done. We gave, does anybody remember when the Charter Review Committee finished its final report? I think we tendered it in April or so.
I believe so, early.
That's a lot of time to write 5 paragraphs. In my opinion, I'm not speaking for the council, but I could have wrote this in a day.
Understand. I will pass that on.
Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Beam, you're up. Discuss seawall code revisions.
Okay, Mayor, Council, this is something that's been on my mind for a while. I've talked to the city manager about it. And basically, we do not have an ordinance or anything pertaining to seawalls.
Mark, can I just ask you to speak as close to that mic as possible, because I can barely hear you and I'm next to you. All right, perfect.
So we do not have an ordinance or anything pertaining to seawalls. So Lynn has picked something up from, I believe, Madeira Beach, and I looked something up from Marco Island, and it seems to be the most complete. I hope everybody has just looked at it, but I think what we need to do is have staff or Lynn or our seawall engineer that the city has been using for years to review this and see just what we could use in it to make up an ordinance for the city.
Do you have one of these that you favor over the others, or is this just background for us?
I would say it's, you know, the other two are background. The one from Marco Island that I picked up off the internet seems to be the most complete, the most explanatory. There's some stuff in there that we really don't need, but I think overall the information that's in there would give the residents an idea of what they have to do, and then of course with that ordinance, maybe there should be an inspection done since some of the seawalls are 70 years old, except for the ones that have been repaired. And I can say I'm glad in my area, on 22nd and Louisa, they have finally repaired one seawall, but I look across the bay on Bayshore, and there's one that's had a bad cap for about 5 or 10 years. So I'm sure there's others that have occurred through the city. So I think it's important with the age of these seawalls and the changes in the currents and flows and the storms that we've had, I'm sure that especially on the end of each finger, those panels go down only so many feet, and it's a requirement that they at least have a percentage underneath the seabed to prevent those from kicking out. And the older seawalls have never had any hydraulic drains or whatever you want to call it put in them. So the chance of those seawalls blowing out after all these years, especially on the end of all the fingers, is quite risky. So I don't know, Lynn, what you think about it.
And I was going to ask if the council doesn't mind, I would like, with the council's permission, I'd like to hear from Lynn Reeves and then maybe back to us, because you're ultimately going to be charged with enforcing this and trying to make it happen. So, council, you have a problem if you go to Lynn Reeves? Lynn?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, our current ordinances don't really address seawalls, other than, the repair of them and things of that nature that could be raised. So I think some type of ordinance would be beneficial, but somehow we're gonna have to look at who's gonna perform that inspection, because it really needs to be a person that, engineer with that capability, as opposed to me going out there and saying, oh, your cap's cracked, change your seawall. So, in looking at all of these, Marco Island's pretty detailed. We could use something similar to that, but I guess a lesser packet, because there's a lot of stuff in there that really doesn't pertain to us. But the things, to illustrate the problems and things of that nature, I think it's important. But that wouldn't be really put in the ordinance. It would be, based on an inspection of someone had a problem. Obviously, we can move forward with it. If we have to enforce it, then it's going to have to be enforced through a code violation. So that's where we need to go. If you look at Madeira Beach, which is the first page, it doesn't really say anything. It's got to be, it says hazardous, it's a paragraph. And what we found in doing research, Fort Lauderdale's got one, but not a lot of cities have much to say about seawalls in their ordinances. So I think this is a good opportunity to try to improve our situation with the seawalls. And I'm going to talk about the one on 22nd in Louisa. That seawall has been a nightmare for a long time. Well, it's not now, but they just spent a lot of money redoing it. So that's an improvement, but not everyone's going to do that. So I think we need to come up with some type of ordinance for that.
Lynn, is there any, or are there any official regulations or anything else put out by the state with regard to this that we'd be able to refer or bring into our policy?
Most of the stuff that's in the state talks about reconstruction. As an example, the county code says you can expand your seawall 12 inches. The state says you can do it 18 inches. The county needs to revise their code because in today's seawall world, the vinyl that's being put up there is probably 8 to 10 inches in width. So there's no way to improve your seawall with, 3 inches of concrete. That's like pouring a patio floor, or something. So I think what we need to do is initially maybe take a version of Marco Island, reduce it, then ask an engineer. We've used Ruth Carson, who's a very prominent seawall engineer in the area. Maybe have him look at it and say, okay, what would you change if you were telling someone they had to fix their seawall? I'm sure Ruth would do that for us. And then go on from there.
So the engineers that you have now would be able, one of them would be able to do this?
He's in Pinellas County, he's like seawall engineer for everyone.
Vice Mayor?
Without discussing any of the specifics of the other plans for the neighboring municipalities, Lynn's going to discuss the strategic plan objectives, but what I'll just note right now is acknowledge the fact that he understands the priorities of the seawalls. And if you look at the handout, that you've got there addressing the revised objectives for, if you look under goal 1, you look at objective 2, follow up the code review, address the gaps and the new issues. And it's basically acknowledging that seawalls are a major issue here. And then if you jump down to goal 5, what you'll see is the objective 1 there, addressing seawalls. So you essentially have seawalls taking up 2 major frontline objectives for the city strategic plan. So I just want to acknowledge that he understands the criticality and priority of that, and he's on it.
Any council comments? We've already
Yeah.
discussed.
I'd like to ask City Manager Reeves, are there any seawalls that are totally financially and inspection and everything the responsibility of the city, or do they all belong to individual citizens?
Well, we've redone the seawall on Harrison Avenue. We redid our major seawall on Belle Isle. We have seawalls in most of the little pocket parks, but we routinely inspect them, and they're in pretty good shape. And the city is saving funding for that in the case of the need to repair those. But privately, I know that there's seawalls that, if I look at them, I'd say 22nd Street was a good example. It was terrible. I'm surprised it didn't fall in the water before it did, but there are others in the city that need work on. And the only way for us to enforce it is to have a code with some type of inspection system that allows the city to, I'll say, ask the owner first, and if we have to, go to a code enforcement hearing to get it taken care of.
So who would be responsible for that inspection fee? I'm sure there is one. So would that be the homeowner or the city in order to even enforce the ordinance?
I think the city would be liable for the inspection. If we find this seawall, we're the ones that's asking for feedback, and it would be against a code violation.
Can I just say, it would be our code enforcement officer's job to do that inspection.
Yeah.
The
initial inspection.
Initiate the
Yeah.
project,
Yeah,
the code violation.
right.
If you look at the Marco Island pictures that are in that document, the obvious ones, I'm sure, could be noted by a code enforcement person as a warning that the seawall is compromised. And he could probably write a report based on some of the photographs in that packet, and then refer that to the city manager, and then they can authorize an inspection of the seawall, not going forward.
How is this gonna get done? Because, we have people that have docks that are falling into the water, but no one can see them because no one has a boat, or, I don't know, we don't have access, so we would need somebody, the code person, to go by on the boat, look at everyone's seawall, and the ones with obvious cracks would be the ones that would be turned in. But how are we gonna do that if we haven't gotten around to do that for the docks that are literally, there's one down the street, really falling in the water?
I would agree with that. There's plenty of docks out there that are, literally, I walked out this morning and there were 3 planks floating under my dock that didn't belong to me. It seems
That
to
probably
me-
came from the seawall on 22nd.
Probably so. But my point is that shouldn't that be something that we're attacking at the same time instead of just seawalls? Another comment I have is not all seawalls look, or not all seawalls look new, not all seawalls that are old need massive repairs. And the last thing that I would want is for the city to create problems where they may not necessarily exist. So definitely I encourage to always get a professional opinion before we go after someone.
And I would agree.
Absolutely.
We have no staff here that is a seawall engineer, and I wouldn't want to go to Jody's house and say your seawall's crooked or something. I'd want an engineer. I'm just picking on you.
That's fine. No, I agree completely. I think to Glenn's point, we have it in our strategic plan. We need to do that, revisit code review like we had talked about sooner rather than later. Put this as one of those action items for code review. Seawall and docks and anything that's, you can't necessarily see from the front side, but from the back. So, I don't know when we gear that up and how we go about doing that, if we want to talk about that at the next meeting, but maybe gearing back up the code review committee.
This has been a topic I know Marvin has brought up several times, and I think we probably want to address it at this stage of the game. What I'm hearing is, again, we don't vote tonight for those in the audience. This is not a regular meeting, so all you're here is a consensus, but what I'm hearing is a consensus to have the city manager maybe investigate this a little further. I agree that we should make it part of our code. I don't know if it has to be tied in with the whole code review, because this thing, I think we can split out. It's something we don't have, we can bring it in and, get it done, but I do think we're going to need professionals. I'm not sure if our code enforcement officer has background in this or not, but it is a technical thing. I don't own a dock or a boat, so I can't even speak, with real background on it. But I think Dave Gaddis is right. I mean, it may look terrible, but it may be perfectly, functional. So you want to be careful on that.
That's very true. So what I'm hearing from the council is let's look at this, kind of clean it up a little bit that pertains to our city, and then I'll probably ask Ruth if I can get some feedback from him, Ruth Larson, and then we'll bring something back to you. And then we'll have to devise what is written in the code.
I don't want this to get lost too far. When we have budget season coming up, and we're going to have probably budget sessions in place of work sessions, I guess. So that's what we did last year. Is there a way we can get maybe this information out to everyone without anyone commenting on it? We can get the information out to you so that we'll see where it's going, and we can bring this up as a follow-up unfinished business item at a regular meeting where we're not going on it. But I would like to see this. I'm helping you here, Mark, but I think I'd like to see this thing move along because we've been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah, we'll get some, do some work on this, and then I'll make contact with Ruth and see if we can schedule something.
Did anyone in the audience want to comment on this? Okay, there's being no comments, so you'll move forward with that and then get back to us, and you can shoot stuff out to us directly. We'll pick it up as unfinished business. Patty, if you don't mind, if you could, I'm going to forget this as soon as I walk out of here. Just make that an item for unfinished business, and we'll pick it up at the next council meeting.
Well, we may not have it back by the next council meeting.
That's fine. I mean, just to keep it as a placeholder, and if it's August, it's August. I mean, but I just don't want it to be, pretty soon it's going to be Christmas, and I just don't want us to be like, oh, yeah, we finally got the engineer. Let's move it along.
Just one suggestion, and this is great information, Marv, I appreciate it, but this Marco Island packet, I look at this as more of you have an issue, and let us go through and show you, not necessarily making this, we need a short descript ordinance and then informational packet like this. Okay, I just want to make sure we're not trying to use this for the ordinance.
No, it's quite detailed.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in it. It's great.
And it should include the docks also. If we're going to be inspecting seawalls, let's look at docks. And I just have to remember Glenn Gunn's quote that we're managing boat docks, but we truly are managing boat docks this time. And I think it's important. If you're finding planks underneath your dock,
well, that's from a construction project. I can tell you where they'll come from because I've talked to them about it. They tell me they're cleaning up their wood.
They are. I've given it to Dave Gaddis.
Can I just make one more suggestion in that the ordinance does not include a drone flying over my house? Because there's been one every afternoon and it's driving me crazy. I don't know what the legalities of that are, but it's driving me nuts. So
I won't support it if it has a drone. I didn't support the drone idea last year, and there's
it's not mine, Jody.
Yeah.
I was saying, I didn't think it was so offensive until it's flying over your house. Then it's kind of, you got someone hovering over your house for an hour. It's kind of, that's what I feel like doing.
What time is that happening?
It's about 7, 8 o'clock. It's still like right at sunset, still light out, but Yeah,
No, I'll say something to the sheriff's deputy,
Okay.
see if he can.
you almost have to be walking because you hear it and then you look up, you know, it's kind of, it's.
Yeah, but if he's at the marina,
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
There's been a lot of cases with people using drones, and they're, believe it or not, I think legally they might be able to do it, but it's just intrusive as all hell, and, you know, you shouldn't have to go through it. And I don't think as a city we should be doing it, legal or not. It's just, there's other ways of doing it. We have a kayak, I believe, in our collection of stuff, so if I can paddle the city at 62, I think somebody can paddle the city and check it out. They're respecting docks, so. All right, any other comments on this? And we'll close it. We're going to move on to item number 4 by Vice Mayor Glenn Gunn, discuss the beach access easements. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, with your permission, what I'd like to do is go to number 7 first, give a little talk about that to kind of set the stage for these issues 4, 5, and 6.
Council, do you have a problem if we take this out? This is an informal agenda, it hasn't been adopted, so we have a problem taking it out of order at the Vice Mayor's request?
Not at all.
No, they're both yours, so let's flip off on that, okay?
Thanks for your indulgence. I think what I'd like to do is kind of set the stage for these other items, because what I want to do is just have a enlightened discussion on some things and talk about some of those hard things that we seem to dodge, and I think it'll kind of set the stage for some other things. I think all of us in this room, council members, mayor, city manager, everybody to a person has probably asked themselves, why is it that as a council, city manager, we're making all kinds of progress, all kinds of improvements in the city, and yet there are days when we just don't feel the love from the community, right? And so what I've done is I've kind of put together this very short presentation. You've got a handout there. Notice one of the page, the pruned in at the line, but if you can follow me through, I'll try to hit some of the key points here. Managing expectations, and as a case study or an example, what I want to do is just discuss street flooding, because that's been an issue, and it's one of those things that's kind of showed up in some of the social media stuff, and again, we just weren't feeling the warm and fuzzies from the stuff that we're trying to do. Street flooding has been a well-recognized issue. If you go back and you look at newspaper articles in the Bee, it goes back to 2016. Lynn Reeves is just coming on as a city manager. The outgoing council has recognized that there are critical problems with street flooding. They've been here forever, for the last 15, 20 years, probably since the incorporation of Bel Air Beach. They've just always been here. But in 2016, they were being officially recognized by the council as something we must take action on. So just recently, we just had a major tropical storm blow through. These are pictures from that morning after. You can see some of the street flooding. These are down around 8th, 7th, 6th, and I drove through. I saw some stuff. Pam showed me some stuff on social media about street flooding. And I know other people did too. Other council members took a proactive interest in this and jumped in their cars and drove down the streets to look themselves. Okay, so these are just some of the photographs, and these pictures were actually taken between about 12 noon and 1:30 in the afternoon. You can see there's still some residual water there. You can see some of the lines on the road where the water is starting to recede a little bit, and you can also see some of the residual flooding in the areas of the storm drains themselves. This was a little bit more than your average rainfall. Obviously, we had the tropical storm blow through, but there were also some other mitigating factors involved in this thing. If you look to the left side there, that's a wind diagram, and what you'll see is at the time of this, when these pictures were taken, I just took a couple snapshots of some things. The winds are out of the south-southeast at the time, and they're blowing about 30 to 40 knots. So you've got a very strong onshore wind going into Bel Air Beach on the intercoastal side, which is primarily the area where we deal with street flooding south of the causeway. The middle slide there is a snapshot of what the tides were doing at the time, and if you look, it's right about noontime there, I think. No, I take that back. It's about 12:42 in the afternoon, and the tide is cresting. And you can see it's a very high tide. And on the right side is a snapshot, which was taken a little bit earlier, 10:50 a.m., which was where the tropical storm was dumping torrential amounts of rain in the city. This is a snapshot of the timeline for these stormwater projects. And along the left side, you can see it's been chunked out by individual streets, and there are priorities set. There are priorities 1, 2s, and 3s, which were how the street flooding projects were prioritized. Priority 1s being properties that were in danger of having water intrusion in the actual house or the garage because the water levels were so high. There were priority 2s where the streets were impassable for a period of time. And then there were priority 3s where the streets were passable, but the water was draining out and disappearing within 3 to 6 hours. What you'll see in about the middle of the page there, you've got some blocks that are highlighted in blue. And what those indicate are the actual streets or the projects that have actually already been completed. And you can see the amounts over in the right-hand side, which is the amount that the city has actually spent on those portions of the project. Those 4 areas that have actually been completed, you'll see the total of those projects are just at under $1 million. We've spent $0.9 million on those street projects. The blocks in the green are the projects going forward. And what you can see here is, again, we've spent almost $1 million on the street projects that are completed. What we've got is, we've got 7th and 8th Street in the queue. They are being done this year, and the projects are already in progress at this point. We are about to spend $400,000 on that project. The issue is, on the streets that are blue that have already been completed, we got feedback after these torrential rains where some of the residents were saying, hey, I don't see any change, I'm still getting flooded. City, you should be asking for your money back because you obviously didn't do the job. Well, once again, we walked away from this thing with the warm and fuzzies. Hey, we're doing a good thing, we're addressing street flooding in that portion of the town. So what's the issue here? Well, the issue is we are about to spend another $3.9 million, but our residents aren't happy with what they're seeing. At the end of the day, we're walking away saying, hey, we've done great work. Okay, we were addressing their street flooding, but the residents themselves are saying, hey, wait a second. We're still seeing street flooding. We're not enamored with the progress and improvements that are being made with street flooding. So let's talk about street flooding itself. Okay? We have various issues that threaten the city with street flooding. And what is the number one issue or threat to the city? Well, the bottom line is we live on a barrier island. We have a very low elevation for where we live, and we are in a flood zone A. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That is the number one threat when it comes to the street flooding issue here. Along those lines, we have things like the normal rains and the normal tidal range. We have spring tides and a full moon. We have high onshore winds. We have rainfall that sometimes is above average or extremely heavy, such as when we have a cold front move through or whatever. But by and far, the biggest threat to the city is, hey, hurricanes and tropical storms. Well, what did we just experience during that time? We experienced a tropical storm. So while we've got all these threats to the city with respect to street flooding, what is at our disposal with respect to mitigating these threats? Well, on the right side, what are some of the things that are being done to mitigate some of these threats? Well, first of all, we have a recurring program for cleaning out the stormwater drains. Over time, we have debris from yard work being plugging up the sewers. We have a marine growth in some of the outfalls and that sort of thing. So we are constantly upgrading those things, cleaning them out, and doing the best job we can there. At the same time, we are trying some innovative solutions. We just went through some of these streets where we installed some check valves, and we went so far as bringing in the experts who developed these valves to look at some related and recurring issues and to give us some ideas for improvement. And as far as we can tell, we've already made some improvements there. We can increase the removal capacity. Along with that, what we're looking at is addressing lift station infiltration. This is the issue whereby we need to bring in pump trucks, because what happens is there's infiltration from the stormwater system into the sewage system. And as these vaults start to rise because of the stormwater infiltration into the sewage holding tanks, it sets off alarms. And in order to head off a biological hazard, the county comes in, brings in the pump trucks after the alarms are set off, and we start dumping out these lift stations to make sure that we don't get any sewage spills out of these things. So there are some projects that are going on in Indian Rock Beach that affects back pressures and reduces the outflow capacities, but they're further down the line. But they're being addressed by the county at Indian Rocks Beach, and we hope to see some mitigation from those improvements by increasing the amount of capacity that can be removed, and also reducing the back pressure that is kind of fighting our pumps and what's being evacuated from our lift stations. You've got a red line and a green line there, and the bottom line is essentially the average environmental factors. We can typically deal with normal rains. We can typically deal with the normal tidal range. We can typically deal with tides that are higher because of the full moons. We can deal with high onshore winds. But there's a stacking or a accumulative effect of these things. As you start stacking them on top of one another, what happens is we get out of the realm of 100% dry streets into the realm where we're going to have a perfect storm, we're going to have high winds, high rain, high tide, and guess what? The normal stormwater removal isn't going to keep up with the current conditions. So we're going to experience some conditions where we're out of the normal realm. Well, barring a hurricane or a tropical storm, because once you get to the top there, all bets are off. But we live within this little marginal area between the red line and the green line. And where exactly those fall is not an exact science. Because when you start thinking about stacking up these threats, okay, we've got a little bit higher tide than normal, we've got higher winds than normal, we have higher rainfall than normal, all bets are off. How is that going to affect the stormwater removal and the flooding? It's hard to say. We scope out these projects to make improvements to the stormwater system on these streets. Well, when we do that, you're dealing with the science of project management. They call this the iron triangle. The city manager and his project managers, when we bid these out, for improvements, we only control 3 aspects of the project. What it's going to cost us, how long it's going to take, the schedule, and what exactly is going to be done. We only manage 3 things: cost, schedule, and scope. Well, the problem is, we can do a stellar job of this. We can keep the cost of the project under budget. We can complete the project ahead of schedule. We can hit every desired item on the head when it comes to the scope of the project. We can have 100% quality on how we scope out the project. But the problem is, it doesn't guarantee a satisfied customer or stakeholder. So what's the problem here? Well, because we didn't meet the expectations of the customer or the stakeholders. We think we did a great job. We go home, we declare victory because, hey, we scoped out a good project, it came in under budget, it came in on deadline or before. So what's the issue? Well, it rains, some water shows up on the street, and the customer isn't happy. Again, the street flooding issue here. The red line is our input as the council. We are stakeholders in this thing. We are sponsors. We put up the money for this thing to satisfy our customers, the residents. So we think we do a great job. We scope out the project, we figure out what it's going to cost, we manage the schedule. City manager does a great job managing the project. We declare victory and we go home. The problem is, if the expectations of the customers or our residents is higher than what we built into the project, we've got a mismatch here. Our expectations for this project did not meet the expectations of our residents. There's a mismatch there. The residents are not going to be satisfied with the way this thing turned out. And at the same time, we, as the sponsors of this thing, we're throwing money at this thing, we hit the problem with diminishing returns. We can throw the entire budget of Bel Air Beach at this issue with only marginal returns on the effectiveness. So there's this balancing act of what's going on to try to meet expectations. So what we need to do is we need to consider some things about managing the expectations. Part of our role needs to start proactively thinking about this thing. Not only managing the expectations, what our expectations are aligned with the expectations of the residents or our customers for these projects, and make sure that we are creating alternatives where there's a mismatch in these expectations. Well, what are the expectations? We need to ask. We haven't done a great job of asking that. I think we come to this job as the council, we come to this job as a city manager, we represent our constituents, we think we understand all of the expectations. Well, I think some of this mismatch is because, well, we've either misjudged it or we haven't gotten the specifics of what they actually mean. This goes right down the heart of communications, and we have one of the people right here sitting here is going to be dealing with this thing. It's just like the charters. We are getting smarter about how we charter these committees and these boards. We give them a charter. We set the expectations. These are the number of people going to be on there. This is how long a deadline you have. These are the deliverables. This is what we want from you. At the end of the day, after you've looked at all the data, you've kicked this around, you've done your surveys, you've done your collective wisdom and thinking, these are the things and recommendations we want back. We are starting to get smart about that, and now what we need to do is we need to kind of expand that thought process. Okay? Something that we've hit on just recently, I know Lynn Reeves has put out the bat signal to his network. We are not unique in street flooding. We are not unique in flooding issues. We are a a unique high property value area. Well, we're not the only high property value in the area. Lynn Reeves has talked to his network, and he's talked to his people in St. Petersburg. Snell Island is a perfect example there. High value properties, extreme street flooding issues over there. They don't have a solution to this at all. We're kind of along the same lines. We're looking for solutions, but one of the key aspects of this thing is communication and managing expectations. Defining levels of service. Part of that is, while the residents have expectations, we need to have some smart discussions on what exactly is the city's expectation for providing services to the residents. And by stating that up front, the residents should have a clear understanding of where we're coming from, and either you buy into that or you don't, and that's when we have to start talking to them. Levels of service, well, what am I talking about? In the issue of street flooding, let's just throw out some things for instance. And I'm just going to throw some out there, and at some point we need to have a smart discussion of this thing. So, a level of service might be along the lines of 90 to 95% of the time, we can ensure that your street is going to be dry. Barring a hurricane or a major tropical storm stacked on top of tides, onshore winds, storm surge, whatever, we can ensure that there will be no intrusion in your house or in your garage. 95% of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, while you may get some flooding on your street, the street will remain passable. And we anticipate that the waters will recede in some arbitrary time span, 3 to 6 hours, 3 to 4 hours, 3 to 5 hours, I don't know. These are just some of the things we need to discuss so that we can start setting expectations for levels of service provided. And it's not just stormwater, it's not just street flooding. Everything we think about, street lighting, underground, everything, maybe we need to be thinking about what level of service do we think our residents deserve, or what can we afford to provide, and what is our residents' expectation. Because if there's a mismatch there, let's iron this out before we start throwing money at a project that we think we're doing good, but the residents aren't satisfied with. So that's what it is. Balancing expectations with diminishing returns, making sure that everybody's aligned, and this is our expectation for what we think we're going to accomplish with the project. This should be your expectation of what you're going to receive as a resident. And along those same lines, determining suitable metrics, because we've got to be able to figure out if we're getting better or not. If we can't measure the status quo, how do we know if we're getting better or not? Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Glenn, I have just a comment. I think one of the expectations we all understood getting involved in this is to keep the salt water out of the streets, out of the garages, and off their lawns. That would cut down a lot of expense and repairs in that regard. And the salt water was going into the sewer system. So by doing so far what we've done is accomplish that on the projects that have been completed. But again, when I moved here, I realized I'm on an island, and if it's a high tide condition, we're going to get some water. I think one of the things we're doing is very important, is keep the salt water off our streets, away from our homes, as much as possible. I mean, we could put generators, you could put pumps all over the city, but as soon as the power goes out, what do you have? Or if you have a hurricane, then all that investment is destroyed. I think by doing what we're doing and what we've scoped out to do is going to maximize what we can do, to be perfectly honest with you. So we need to maybe tell the citizens, you can only do so much, and they have to realize where they're at and what conditions are going to affect them in the future. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're on the right path, at the right momentum, solving the problems that are worse first, and then addressing what we can down the road. And that's one of the reasons why Jody Shirley brought up the stormwater utility, is to put money in the reserve to keep these systems operating at their maximum. So I think we're on the right direction. Across the board.
You know, some of this is roles and responsibilities too. The roles and responsibilities. Responsibilities of a buyer or a property owner here when they come into town, they want to live in Bellevue. Looks like a great place. Part of due diligence. Are there people in our community who have an expectation that they can live in Bel Air Beach and they will never see any street lighting here? I think the answer to that question is I think there are some people who live in our community who have an expectation that the streets will always be dry. For some reason, I think some of these people haven't made the connection between, hey, I live in a flood zone A, FEMA has asked me if I want to buy flood insurance, and for some reason, they're not connecting the dots that I live on a barrier island. FEMA says I live in a flood zone and maybe I ought to think about flood insurance. So it's a role and responsibility. Now that also goes to the fact of disclosures and due diligence. My sense is that for some of these people who haven't made that connection, they may have bought properties here where they didn't do their due diligence. Did they ask, do you guys ever experience any flooding here? Are there issues where, you know, sometimes during a storm the streets flood and I can't get out? I've got to ask myself that question once in a while. So, in the absence of that kind of due diligence, the question, and it goes back to roles and responsibilities, is it would seem that there's also a gap where people selling properties or during the exchange of properties, there's no disclosure that, hey, there is an intermittent flood problem. So, with respect to managing expectations, is that a role and a responsibility that perhaps the city should take on in, hey, a little disclaimer on our website that, hey guys, you live in a flood zone A, you know, FEMA says flood insurance might be a good thing to have, and B, you have to understand that at some times, under the right environmental conditions, there will be street flooding that will impact access to your property in this manner. I just throw that out there as something else for disclosure or managing expectations.
I'd like to go ahead and make a statement too. Yeah, I understand everybody's thoughts and opinions on this, but you please got to understand the people that live on these streets. They know they live in a flood zone, they certainly do. Do they expect the streets to flood when the sun is shining and it's high tide and be flooded for 2-3 hours? No, they really don't. But a lot of that is due to our infrastructure. It's so outdated. So to sit here and say, people, you just need to understand it and basically, for lack of a better way to put it, suck it up because your street's going to flood, you know, just managing their expectations is one thing, but getting some of these issues fixed so they don't have to worry about their expectations being managed is another thing. We need to focus on that too, rather than just telling them, you know, we're going to have to live with it. We know we live in a flood zone, every single person does, but when the sun is shining and those streets are flooded for 2 and 3 hours, it's not a half an hour event. It's nothing like that. But, I mean, we're asking for the infrastructures to be fixed. And yes, there is a schedule that you provided. And I think we really need to focus on that and get them done. And then we need to look at some of the streets that we're still having problems with, that the fixes were done, to see if we didn't do something correctly, if something has come apart, or whatever the fix may be that's obviously not fixed. So, I mean, that is where these people are coming from that live on these streets, is we need to focus on their concerns and get this stuff fixed the best we can. And then their expectations can be managed with, you got a little bit of rain, okay. You got a high tide, your street's flooded for 3 hours. I mean, we need to fix the infrastructure. That's very important.
I think I understand and I appreciate that position. And I hope I wasn't taken out of context. It's like just suck it up. No, that's not the point here. The point is that after a torrential rain during a tropical storm, when the front moves through and the sun comes out, the water that's in the street, might it take 2 or 3 hours to drain? Yeah, it just might.
It hadn't rained for 24 hours when the high tide came up and it flooded for 3 hours. It had not rained for 24 hours. It rained the day before, yeah, but not during that time. We can't relate every time the street floods to a torrential downpour or a rain. It happens every high tide and several other times, and it may not have rained at all for quite a while. So it's not like you got the rain come down, the streets get a little bit of water in them. I just don't want anybody to walk away being misled that that's what's happening, because it is not what's happening.
And I've been on council 2.5 years now, and there has not been one meeting that we did not address infrastructure failing and the flooding issues. This is an ongoing problem. We have addressed it. We have done everything within our power to do the repairs. City manager has done everything he can do. It's not, we can't fix 50 years of failure. Nothing's been done in 50 years plus. And all of a sudden, it's this council and it's our fault. And Glenn has done a beautiful job kind of laying out exactly when high tide was. I don't care what you do. That is not going to fit, that will never be fixed. We cannot control tides. And we can't fix that without elevating the streets. If we elevate the streets, everyone's going to flood. We can't elevate anything else because those houses are at an elevation that aren't going to be rebuilt. They haven't been rebuilt in 50 years, they won't be rebuilt. So it's an ongoing problem. There's deferred maintenance that no one has touched the stormwater until 2016. We have done, there's not been a meeting go by that we don't address something about storm or deferred maintenance on our infrastructure. And Lynn's doing a jam-up job on it. Lynn, I can't say enough good things about you outlining this and putting it in place and trying to get funding and get creative. And we are doing all we can. Now, to Glenn's point, I think, is that I don't believe that the residents understand the amount of time and money and effort that the city is dumping into these projects, and we're trying to solve them the best we can. There is no one's thumbing their nose. There's areas of the city that don't flood. I noticed Harrison's not even on this list of flooding problems. Well, that day we had our street covered in water because of the high tide. There's nothing you can do to manage that. That's Mother Nature. It happens. We're doing the best we can. We're solving those problems that we can, and I think the city and this council has done a great job focusing on that. Thank you, Glenn.
I have to agree with you, Jody. The check valves that were put in, and first there's 6 sunny day check valves, and I think there was some misperception initially. And I know because I wrote during the election to the public about this, and I said those are sunny day check valves. They're doing their job on the sunny days. They're doing their job very well. We had one that wasn't doing well. Lynn went and got people from, I think, overseas to come in and look at the stuff. So, but they weren't going to. It was never going to solve the flooding. Okay. It's a matter of tackling these priorities, and we see it on here. And I'll speak about the 7th Street lift station, because that was my project, and June Van Scoy's project. I didn't take no for an answer. Before I ran, I spoke with the city manager, he's like, it's been like this for 20 years, good luck, you're wasting your time. I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna waste a little more time, let's go try and get this fixed. We lobbied the county. We delivered a $2 million project for this city that didn't cost Bel Air Beach 1 cent. And I was surprised because during this last flood, somebody called me up and told me 4 o'clock in the morning, the pumping trucks were on and they couldn't sleep. I'm like, this thing was supposed to be done. So we called up the county, and actually I sent Patty a chain of the emails. I called up my friend at the county, and I said, what's the status of this project? They're like, it's going to be done in July. So come July, you're not going to have those pumping trucks anymore on 7th Street. That was because of the efforts. So if you see something that you can change or you can go about it, do it. And I agree, 50 years, okay? And the end of the last council and this council are the ones tackling it. You brought up about the stormwater fee. That could have been in place 10 years ago, and we would have had that money. So, you know, be proactive. I will give Lynn Reeves credit on this. He's been working on the sunny day checkout, but hey, if we get a hurricane or a tropical storm, unfortunately, it's going to flood. We are in a flood zone, and that's the price we pay for living here. So there's not a lot you can do about that. Not that I know of, and if the city manager knows things, he's holding them back because I know he wouldn't, you know, keep them from us. There's nothing you can do.
No, Mayor and Council, to Vice Mayor's point, you know, I talked to the people at St. Petersburg on Snell Island. What they're doing is not going to stop flooding down there. They're using the same valves we are. They're trying to stop the backflow. They have set up some kind of program with the, or they're looking into it. It hasn't been established yet to the engineer's explanation of, you know, maybe giving some subsidy to the seawall, people to raise their seawall. And on the day when it rained and stormed, which was Saturday, and I'm going to use 7th Street, the water was at the top of the seawall and splashing over it, okay? Now, to Councilmember Swope's point, the sunny day, 7th and 8th Street don't have a valve on it, so guess what? What's happening? That's still from the high tide, and it was a high tide that day. Can you drive down the street? Well, I can, because I went out to see what the other streets look like. And yeah, there's little puddles of water, but not anything, any great amount of water. The water on Saturday, with the tide being high and all that rain coming, for the most part, it was rainwater that was filling up the streets. And to clarify that a little further, we're going to start taking samples of that water when it happens, because, you know, I did a cursory glass of it. I didn't drink it, but might have helped with the virus. I don't know. I'll have to ask Robin. But it didn't smell like salt water to me. It was, you know, because usually there's a little salty smell to it. But to alleviate some of that, we're going to start doing some spot tests when that happens. I'm not saying that we haven't had some issues. 13th Street, we had an issue. We had to bring the engineer out. There were some modifications he made to it, and it seemed to work fine. 12th and 13th Street is the project for next fiscal year, which will get more capacity. And we're going to do the same with 7th and 8th Street, get more pipe capacity at the end of the street, so we've got more storage, I'll call it. But they weren't meant to prevent flooding. I'm a prime example. I've lived here 22 years. I've had water in my garage one time. Never had it in my house. And I don't have a check valve on my street because it flows from 7th Street. So, yes, it gets in your yard. Yes, it gets in your driveway. Yes, it comes up maybe 10 or 15 feet in your driveway or your yard. In the worst case. But I think what we're doing is trying to prevent the majority of our problem. We cannot stop tropical storms or heavy rainstorms when it comes down like that. It's not possible. And we don't have any land to put a vault in. Our seawalls are at a point where, okay, if it's at the top of the seawall and we're going to pump it over, where's that water going? It's coming right back where it came from, because the water level's going to stay the same. So that's kind of my 2 cents, and based on what I heard from Snell Isle people, they've got the same problem. The only way to fix it is tear the house down and build it up. And then you can elevate the road. But other than that, there's not anything else you can do to it. And the pump station that you mentioned, they've, just to clarify, as the county explained it to me, they're hoping that it alleviates the pump trucks. They aren't positive yet, but it is going to decrease the pressure and push that where it's stormwater infiltration into the sewer system. They built a better system, I'll call it downstream, and that should relieve some pressure on our lift station at 7th Street. So hopefully that works, and but it can't guarantee me that they still won't bring those pump trucks. So
Hopefully there'll be less.
hopefully less. Yeah.
I mean, they
They
went
were here
initially,
for,
you and I were at that meeting, and initially they said they thought they would be able to tackle it, and now I know they kind of hedged a little bit, but I think they're just going to hedge because they want to see what happens when it rains. I kind of figured that they got a good chance. of
yeah,
it.
they were pumping about 36 hours.
It was better this time than in the past. I didn't know that. It wasn't as long given the amount of rain. Yeah, so that was good. Any other council comments? Anybody in the, from the citizens? Okay, then we're going to close this. Vice Mayor, I think you have the next couple items. We've been going for almost an hour and a half. Does anybody need a break? Want to keep going? I see anybody asking for a break. Okay, so item 4 becomes item 5, which is now discuss beach access easements. Vice Mayor, then.
I'll just hit on that quickly. I think all the council members saw the email generated by some of the residents. This goes to expectations. I'm not quite clear on what the expectations are. There are clearly a mismatch and some dissatisfaction with resident perception of parking enforcement, the offloading of passengers and coolers, how we deal with nuisance or non-compliant behavior on the beaches, and trash cleanup is also an issue there. I just want to try to understand again what those expectations and concerns are. I know one of the authors of that email is in the audience, and perhaps we could ask him to step up to the microphone with information.
I have no problem with that. Council has no problem. Rick Schock authored that memo. I thought it had a lot in it, a lot of good information. So if we want to take it out of order, we could have him make that presentation and maybe get back to a council discussion. No objection? I hear none. Mr. Schock?
Rick Schock, 115 13th Street, Gower Beach. First of all, I want to be clear, my concern here tonight has nothing to do with the private property or who owns what. For some reason, there's still some confusion on that, but if you look at the Pinellas County website, it's very, very clear who owns what, and it's also very, very clear that Bel Air Shore, their properties that they claim are their properties, which actually infringe on public property. But that's not what I'm here to discuss tonight. Tonight, there are 2 issues that I want to bring to your attention. I thank you for addressing this in a timely manner. The first has to do with the willingness or the ability of our city to protect Bel Air Beach citizens, the residents of Bel Air Beach, and our exclusive access to the beach through the access points. This has all been laid out in documents, which I'm sure the city has copies of. It's very, very clear that property belongs to Bel Air Shore. It's been protected forever, so that the residents of Bel Air Beach only have access through those points to the beach. So that's the first issue. And that kind of leads into the second one, which is the continuation of rowdy and disruptive behavior that is observed on the beach that I personally believe is largely propagated or engaged in by non-residents of the city. Now, I'm sure that that's not entirely true. I'm sure the residents of our city who maybe are disrespectful, but I think it's very, very important because we share that beach. Without getting into the legal issues of all of this, we have neighbors, and those people in Bel Air Shore, obviously they have deep pockets, obviously they want to protect their property, so I think we should all have an interest in keeping the peace on that beach, because if push comes to shove, it's going to put us in a slightly challenging position. So, and I want to say, you know, I'm not a prude here. I like to have a good time like everybody else, but there's a place to play loud music, to let your dogs loose on the beach, to wreak havoc. I'm all for that, but not on Bel Air Beach, or not on the public beach in front of the Bel Air Shore residents. Go to Clearwater Beach, go to Indian Rocks Beach. There are many places to do that. I think it's fair to say that our residents enjoy a peaceful and calm environment on the beach. All you have to do is look north and look south, and I don't think too many of us really want to go up there on Saturday or even on any given day unless we're just out for a walk. So my point is, and the reason for writing the letter is some of the behavior that I've seen is just, it just seems to have gotten worse. And I think we want to, as has been said at many meetings here in months past, you know, we have parks and all the rest of that, but really what we're about is the beach. And I think that we all treasure the beauty and the tranquility of the beaches of Bel Air Beach / Bel Air Shore. So thank you for addressing my concerns.
Thank you. Council, discussion?
I have a question. To what extent can we, let's just say there's a group of people on the beach, and maybe it's two groups, and one group is Bel Air Beach residents, and the other group is someone else from another community. Is there any recourse whatsoever if we decide they should not be there? Is there anything we can do about it?
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Where exactly are they on the beach?
If they are in front of Bel Air Shore's residents,
It's
not on the wet sand. I understand that. I'm talking dry sand.
Depending on who owns the beach, if it's, you know, again, I didn't look at this map. I think somebody put a map here as to where the coastal control line is. But some of the people in Bel Air Shore were saying they own sand. Rick Schock apparently looked at this thing. Apparently they don't own the sand. They think they own, that's not a full, final legal opinion, but if they own the sand, they can do whatever they want. If they don't own the sand, then it's a public beach. And then you can almost do what you want. Of course, no dogs and stuff like that, no alcohol. But I think the issue here, and I want to make sure we stay focused on this thing, it's not so much what you do when you get to the wet sand, it's what you do to get to the wet sand. What is private and deeded to this community, and it is not an expectation, it is a deeded legal right to beach access at 3 easement points. That is a deeded legal right that belongs to everyone who resides east of the center line of Gulf Boulevard. And it is not an option. It is why our houses, it's why I paid more money than I had to for a piece of sand across the street from the beach. If I didn't have that beach access, that piece of sand is probably a lot less valuable. So these are rights that are to be protected. It is the right to a private beach access.
Mayor,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I'd like to interrupt just a second.
Yeah.
I don't think you quite grasped where I was going with this, is that is there something in place that says non-Bel Air Beach residents cannot be on that sand?
Not on the wet sand, it's public, that's
Not
Florida
on the wet
property.
sand,
Yeah.
on the dry sand.
Dry sand, depending on who owns it.
Okay.
So it depends where that coastal control line is. If it's truly private, there's some pieces of beach that are private. And if so, it's just like you couldn't be in their backyard. It's just
Right.
an extension. But if that coastal control line, which for the most part, I know the city manager told me most of it is the retaining wall. So after the retaining wall, if you're on the beach, that's public sand, so anyone can be on that. But you can't use our beach access to get to it. That's the key, and that's where we're having the problems now with people parking, people dropping stuff off, people, you see cabs coming in. I think Vice Mayor Gunn said that he saw a busload of people come in. Last night, I saw so many people, the sheriff he couldn't even write tickets, he just ejected them all. He's just like, get out, and then parking lot cleared to like 50%. So that's how many people were at the 6th Street easement last night that didn't belong. It is our responsibility as a city. There was an interlocal agreement signed in 2003 by Mayor Kelly, okay? And we're supposed to be doing the enforcement of that. Bel Air Shore has had a problem, rightfully so, and I think they still have the problem with people using those easements that aren't supposed to be using them. So it's a deeded responsibility to make sure we have private beach access. Once you get to the beach, then you're okay, but you can't cross to get to the beach. That's the issue. So I hope that answered the question.
It sort of does.
Mayor, just because Councilmember Gass is looking at that map, what I gave you tonight, we plotted the erosion control line from First Street till it goes back to the seawall, which is about right at 17th, 18th Street. It goes back to the seawall going north. And these are estimates of the distances, but I'll just use 6th Street. If you look at one lot to the left of it, it appears that person owns about 35 foot of beach. If you look to the right of it, a couple houses down, it drops to 26 foot and keeps going down till it gets to 0 before the 19th Street access. It actually goes back to the seawall at 17th Street roughly. But this, this isn't perfect science. We went on the Pinellas County Property Appraiser site to get this information. And this is what if you pull up, and I'll just pick a property, if you pulled up the property that's next to 6th Street access, their property line goes out that distance.
35 feet.
To about 35 feet.
Well, that can take you to the water on some days.
Some days.
Yep.
Last week, yes, it could have taken you to one. And I did speak to Mayor Schmidt about it, and I'm kind of getting the impression they're going to have some further discussion about it. Mainly, their concern is I guess I'll call them the outside people coming in there and creating problems. But it isn't just outside people that's creating these problems. It's even our own residents. They're and this has been going on for a lot of years. If we said, okay, the beach access is ours at 6th Street, to go out, then, imaginary if there was a fence on the left and right, and this is where you could go. You could go to the public beach. Same with 12th Street. This is where you can go, not to the right or not to the left. And mainly the complaints that we're getting are things like setting up canopies in front of people's houses and things of that nature. It's not normal, but over the years I can tell you there's people that actually would go up to some of these accesses and agitate the homeowner, then he'd call the police and, because he didn't want them sitting against their seawall. But at this point in time, I think Bel Air Shore will want to work with us, and they are looking into one of the same issues we are with the fact that they've had some people show up that don't belong there. The issue is, how do you control that? The only way to control that is, okay, What, are you gonna lock the gates, give a key to everyone, and everybody's gotta get out, unlock the gate, and drive in there if they wanna drive there, or walk there and drive in? How many people do you think will turn around and shut the gate? Probably not very many, because that's extra work in today's world. But you spend money for electronic gates, well, that's a discussion we'd have to have with Bel Air Shore. And that's not a cheap proposition.
Lynn, can I ask, is Bel Air Shores complaining, or is this just our citizens that are aggravated with, which rightfully so, I'm just asking, is it just the citizens aggravated? Is that why we're discussing this, or is Bel Air Shores coming to us and saying we have a problem as well? Because I know, looking at this map, I was on 19th and asked not to sit behind that house. Well, clearly there's no, they don't own the beach behind that house. So, there was a sheriff out there that asked me not to sit behind it, and I'm, out there with a little umbrella with my grandson. I'm like, this is ridiculous, but,
Well, Bel Air Shore's got some issues with some people that, what I'll say, and it was right before the shutdown. We had an issue at 12th Street. Somebody went in there and set up a wedding, and the sheriff didn't do his due diligence. And I'm not going to debate if the sheriff did or didn't, but nothing happened. They had their wedding, took their tables and left. Well, they didn't come from here. They came from somewhere else. But when I spoke to Mayor Schmidt about it, he said they've got some issues they're concerned about, and they're going to talk about it. And we tried to set a meeting up, but it kind of didn't work out. And then I tried to set one up with the vice mayor, but we couldn't get a hold of Mayor Schmidt.
do we know when they have their council meetings, so maybe we could attend those, and that would be a good time to, ask them what their
I
problems are?
think they have one tomorrow night. Is that right, Laura? Is it tomorrow night?
I'm a resident,
Oh, well, I'm asking you, not as a resident.
Toronto.
Yeah. I think
Tomorrow
they-
night. Is that here, or
No, it's Bel Air Bluffs.
at Bel Air Bluffs?
It's virtual.
Oh, it's virtual. It's not in Bel Air Bluffs, okay. So, there's a,
And just to be clear, Bel Air Shore has not approached Bel Air Beach.
no,
Bel Air Beach has approached Bel Air Shore.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we're just trying to see if there's a problem.
And I'm gonna say this, and I've said it over and over and over, a lot of this stems from short-term rentals on those condos, and us opening up Morgan Street to public parking and taking every citizen's space from Morgan Street. A lot of this spills over from Morgan Street Park.
Well-
Vice Mayor?
Now, I was gonna say, I agree with everyone says, because I've had the same problem as you, Jody, with that one house on 19th, and we were at the water line, we were told to fill in a hole that was at the water line, which was nowhere near his property. But anyway, but my whole point is, I think what we need to do is start off small, basics, common sense, like anybody who doesn't have a beach sticker who's parked there, automatic ticket, no warning. Just start like that. If it's a resident that didn't get their sticker, well, they'll know next time they need to come in and pay their $5.35 and get their sticker. If beyond that, then we need to address more of an issue. And I think we need to start with the basics instead of jumping to a key or an electronic gate and just do the basics. I've seen the sheriff sitting out there, which is great, but sometimes I think it's kind of confusing on the rules. So it seems like each officer doesn't have the same agreement as other officers as far as when residents of Bel Air Shore complain about their property line. And granted, I understand it's small peanuts in their grand world of all the stuff they have to deal with. But I think if we just have a set understanding, set rules that maybe we can give to them, that way they all have it and say, okay, this is our job. These are the rules, this is what we're going to enforce, and start with that and see if that helps. As far as what Gaddis was saying about, one family's a resident, one family's not. Well, I mean, if I invite my friends from Bel Air Bluffs to come over, they park at my house and we all walk down and we're sitting there in front of the motel or wherever we are, I think that should be allowed because they're my guests. I don't think we should go by and be like, let me see your ID. Are you a Bel Air Beach resident? No, if you're not, get out. So I think we need to have common sense and let's not go crazy. Let's start with the basics. Enforce the rules that we have. Start there, let's see where it goes, and then we'll get more strict if we need to.
Well, Lynn, doesn't Bel Air Shore control, basically giving the directions to the sheriff? Bel Air Beach doesn't control that at all. Since we don't own those accesses, Bel Air Shore owns them, so they give direction to the sheriff. Also, when you mention people going into the beach access, if they're not driving, they can certainly walk across that property to go in. Is that correct? There's no sign out there that
Well,
says you cannot walk across it.
That's debatable, and we need to.
It's not debatable.
But
It's
I
clearly
guess
not
what I,
debatable. It's a private beach access, you cannot walk across no more than you can walk across the house next door to it.
right, but you
cannot
would
walk
have
across.
to, the
It's
only way
Bel Air
to
Beach
prevent
residents.
that, you would have to lock the gates. You're not going to do that, and Bel Air Shore would have to say that's okay to do that.
Yeah. and-
Bel Air Shore gives the direction to the sheriff to enforce that. Their parking ticket is their parking ticket. It has nothing to do with us.
And we have to change our interlocal agreement, because our interlocal agreement says that Bel Air Beach Bel Air Shore as trustee said that Bel Air Beach is going to handle the security to make sure that the people who don't belong in that parking lot are excluded from it. That's the interlocal agreement from 2003, signed by Mayor Kelly. And that is still
It might
active
have been
to
when
this
Bel
day.
Air Beach was patrolling for Bel Air Shore.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Bel Air Beach used to patrol Bel Air Shore.
Right, but
Maybe
Bel Air-
that needs updated.
No, it doesn't talk about the patrol, it talks about the security, is the responsibility. Bel Air Shore is trustee, Bel Air Shore is the trustee of that property. Right. And Bel Air Shore has said, Bel Air Beach, you handle it. So that's fine, okay? And Bel Air Beach signed an agreement, said we'll handle the security on it. So it's our responsibility, okay? We talked to Captain Lyman, Jody Shirley, in your comment. I read in the newspaper, the Bel Air, not the Bel Air B, but the other one, the Beach Buzz. And their council in Bel Air Shore was complaining about the same thing. Sunset, I've been saying this for a year and a half. Sunset, everybody piles in, don't belong there. It happened last night again. And they said they're going to talk to Captain Liner. I mean, I've heard that, 10 times already? So, I mean, I'm not saying it's Captain Liner's fault. It's just not happening, okay, for whatever reason. And that's where we have to step it up, because this is deeded beach access. It's not something the city's giving you. It is something you own as a resident, okay? And maybe we need to have Fred Riley do the legal interpretation, because this is my legal interpretation of reading the deeds. But I got the deeds from Patty, and I got the interlocal agreement from Patty. And you can read those yourself. And they're not the easiest things to read because they were written in the 1940s, but they pretty much say it all, what your rights are. These are your rights, and this affects your property here. So, and it's not the city giving anything. It's yours. It's deeded. You own it. We all own a little piece of that access. Not a big piece, but a little piece. So, I'm just saying, I think we've heard some good suggestions. I think Rick Schock had the idea, Jody and I brought it up the last budget show about a tollway zone, and that'll certainly get people's attention. No, I don't think we have to go with electronic gates just yet. That's an expensive, very expensive option. Towing is not an expensive option. Let me tell you, $225 later, we'll never come to another sunset here. That's, yeah.
Well, that's something that I think we need to talk to Bel Air Shore.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, Mayor, may I step in? When that agreement was signed, we had our own police department. And it was basically easy for us with 2 on a shift at night to patrol those. But since we lost the police department, the amount of time that there's only one officer, and whatever Bel Air Shore paid for is just a certain amount of time. So really, they don't have enough time allotted to do all those patrols there. So that's an issue. So you'd have to weigh the cost of the officer's time in the cars and whatever they're doing, weigh that against the cost of the gates and a keyed access. It may be a break even, who knows? That's something that would have to be discussed between Bel Air Shore and us. Fair, equitable way of doing things.
Yeah, just a couple of things. My view of this issue is that the concern is actually the knuckleheads on the beach. And the connection we're making is that we can control that with access. Because I'm not quite sure the access is a real thorn in our side right now. But I think the view is that if we want to get rid of the problem and control the beach, you do that through controlling the access. Now, I don't agree with the, hey, we'll take the laissez-faire, it's just a couple people, a couple times a week or during the weekend walking through, because you're going to see that progressively increase. And I think we're all paying taxes. I don't have that expectation. Here's my resident expectation. I don't expect to see droves of people going through there unloading coolers because we have allowed them to have access through there, and it causes the problems on the beach there. With respect to the legalities, that's one of the foundations we really need to iron out here to understand what ground we really stand on here. And the recommendation may be to pitch this back to the planning and zoning board. Get back to work. We've got a new project for you, and that is to research and tell us exactly where we stand on some of these issues. And then along with that, once we have that foundation, start thinking about this expectation on what is the level of services that the city should provide with respect to enforcement of parking. Should be towing. Is the signage wrong? Should it be saying private property, no access? This thing where, hey, for inclusive use of Bel Air Beach residents, I don't think it has the gravitas of something like, hey, this is private property, no trespassing allowed, strictly enforced, that sort of thing, and a towing sign there. Once people see those towing trucks pulling cars out of there, boy, I'll tell you what, the word's going to spread quickly. So again, the level of service as far as enforcement goes, that goes to enforcement, access, parking, trash removal, pickup. What are my expectations of, I think I should be able to walk in through that access and enjoy it on a Saturday afternoon and not see trash overspilling and receptacles there, or people, they're kind enough, they leave their bags next to the trash receptacle, but I don't even expect to see that. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of things that can be researched too.
And they're not even leaving them next to the receptacle. I mean, the trash is spewed all over the beach. It's horrible.
Vice Mayor, I pretty much agree with everything you said, except it is bad, okay? When I was building my house, I went across there to relax every night after a hard day's work. I was the only one on the beach. You go there now, I mean, I'm not kidding you, I could see it from the balcony last night. The sheriff couldn't even enforce it because he was like, he just went to the beach and he's like, okay, everybody doesn't belong here, come out. And all of a sudden I saw this half of the parking lot empty, which was a great way. He did a great job of clearing the lot. But that's like 50% of the people on a Sunday night are at that beach access point. They don't belong there. Now, when you take a look at this map that Mr. Schock just gave us and Lynn Reeves just gave us, the way I look at this, some of the residents of Bel Air Shore have been very generous to us and let us use what really looks like to be their beach in front of their house. Okay? If they get tough and they say you can't use it, the only beach we're really going to have is what's in front of that easement. And I can't share that with 30 or 40 people who come in with a bus from Largo or Tampa or something like that, because there's not going to be enough room for our residents. So I do think we have to, we've been talking about this a while, I think we have to kind of move this to the next level here and see what we can do. Obviously, speaking of Bel Air Shore is the next thing. They're, I think, sharing the same sentiment as us, so they're not the problem, and neither are we. We need to try and figure out how to deal with the problem with these outside folks who are coming in. And I'm sorry, I'm with you. You can't walk across that property. There's a multi-million-dollar house to the left of there. I can't walk across his backyard and say, hey, buddy, just got to the beach. Don't bother me. You're not allowed to do it. It's trespassing.
So we give all of our beach access away, Bel Air Beach does, which generated a lot more visitors to this beach. And meanwhile, we're abusing the Bel Air shores. I still have a real struggle with this, and I know I've heard it over and over and over. It was beach renourishment. We had to give our parking away. We've given our parking away to Largo, to Pinellas Park, whoever wants to come out here. And that is probably increasing the problem. That's just making the problem worse, because our lots are overflowing because we've given all of our parking to general population, and therefore they're going to the Bel Air Shore lots. And we created this problem. I don't know how we solve it, but that's how this problem got created. That's why there's so much traffic on our beach, because we have public access.
We
Bel Air Beach has public
Can I ask you
access.
a question? Were you on the council when that last, because we're in the process right now of getting a new renourishment.
No, I was not, but I've been
Okay.
fighting it from the get-go. And
Is
I,
this something though that we have to do? Because we're going to give it, are we going to give it away again by getting this new renourishment? Because, I mean,
clearly, we don't have to. Bel Air Shores doesn't renourish.
and exactly.
And their beach is plentiful. I mean,
Yep,
Well,
that's where I'm going with it.
if we don't want beach renourishment, then we would revert to Bel Air Shore. Similar situation. Now, Bel Air Shore gets a lot of sand from our renourishment. If we don't get renourished, then
and Clearwater will push down to us,
some,
San Key.
some.
But I think Councilwoman Shirley has a point here that, you know, and if I don't mind me jumping,
No,
taking it a
please.
step further, but do we want this as a
I
community?
don't think we do.
You know, because you're filling up the lot. I mean, I heard the marina lot got filled up the other week, you know, you and I were talking, like, the marina lot got filled up, that's a lot of cars, that's a lot of people for some sand, and you know what? I mean, I swim down, you know, on the Bel Air Shore access points. I'd love to have a beach as big as what we have up by Morgan and north of there. That's a lot nicer, a lot wider. You know, so you have a lot of sand right there right now. So I don't know, maybe we pass it over. I'm just throwing this idea out. I'm not saying it's the way to go, but that is a solution because now you're
That's
not.
what's created
Yeah,
the
you
problem.
can't come
I
here
lived here a
anymore.
long time, and we didn't have this problem 20 years ago.
Eliminate the attraction.
Let me
The problem
interrupt
is-
for a minute, Mayor. Lynn and I know that at 19th Street, the ocean was at the seawall. And that's what it was, and maybe Shirley, you would remember that. And there was no beach all the way up in front of the condos, all the way up into Sand Key. There was nothing there. Am I correct, Lynn?
The beach was back quite close to the seawall, so you're thinking you're gonna get what you got right now? It's not gonna happen, and over time, and, you know, I would guess that regardless of the situation with parking, that the majority of the residents would still like to have that beach the way it is, as opposed to
What it was.
what it was.
And as much as I hate the problem that we currently have, I've seen the pictures of the before and after all the way up and down our coast, and it's devastating. There's a lot of places where literally they have zero beach. When at high tide, the water is all the way up to their retaining wall and almost flowing into their hotels, homes, whatever. You know, maybe it's, maybe there's we don't have to do as much or something. I'm not really sure what the answer is, but it seems to me like the first gesture would be to say no parking, tow-away zone, and enforce it. Work a deal with the towing company and say, if you see anybody without a Bel Air Beach sticker, they're yours. Take them away now. And,
You're talking about the beach at
Beach
East.
taxis, the three beach
Okay,
taxis.
and I still
We're going to go
think,
to the audience in a second.
And then maybe even raise the parking fees in Morgan Park and,
I think we would have to have that discussion with Bel Air
Of
Shore.
course, of course.
For, you know, these are just suggestions at this point that we need to discuss with Bel Air Shore.
I guess what we want to do is get this going here. I'm going to see if there's any more council. I know there's two hands from the audience, so anybody else on the council before we take it out to the audience? We'll come back to the council. June and John Hensel.
Jim Vanscoy, 7th Street, Bel Air Beach. A couple things. First, I agree with the councilwoman was saying, we are our own worst enemy. We basically have attracted the people from other cities to come in, okay? And they just think that it's the normal because they go to Clearwater Beach, they know it's okay, there's parking meters there, and so forth. Also, we benefit from those parking meters. Why not put some of that money that we get from those parking meters back into eliminating these problems, investing it back into it. Third of all, I stood at the Big C meeting and I spoke to the county, and we talked about different ways to protect our sand, our beaches. And if you go across Howard Franklin Bridge, and I know everybody's seen it, is those oyster beds, okay? They put those out, further out in the ocean where you can't see them from the beach, but it would cut down our erosion, okay, to our beaches. And I think that that would be something that would be good for this city to think about addressing the county and to consider doing that for us, opposed to making us give our accesses away all the time to outsiders. Thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
already been addressed at the Big C.
I'm sorry?
That's already been addressed at the Big C a time ago, of what they have.
You're talking about the oyster beds?
Universities and somebody else, marine, a bunch of people looking into jetties or whatever it might be to maintain the beach.
What was the result?
They have people working on
They have, it's being worked on?
it.
Okay. John?
John Hansick, 22nd Street. I came here to speak about earlier about the topic I did, but I also came here to support my shipmate, Rick Schrock, about this beach access stuff. I heard that there was a letter out there. He sent a copy of it. I concur with him 100%. And then in the package, have an email from another resident, I won't mention the name, that had a episode or incident recently with a deputy. I'd sum it up as basically she got blown off. So this thing that we keep floating around, levels of expectation, we spend nearly $500,000 a year for the Sheriff's Department to service us with protection. Each one of these beach accesses has the signs that says what's prohibited, any ordinances or rules that prohibit them. Enforce them. There's no shades of gray in this stuff. It's black and white. And as far as the parking in these beach accesses, it won't cost you anything. And again, I know you got to go to Bel Air Shore. You get a tow company, they'll put the signs up. It's time we took our city back. I didn't live here when we had our own police department. But this was a city, there was a time in this city, people obeyed the law. And it's time they started doing it again. And maybe, if I may, you and I had a conversation over the phone about a couple of issues, and we're going to possibly have a meeting with the sheriff. Let me know when it happens. I have some more people come with me.
Thank you.
Yes.
How you doing, folks? I'm Randy Levitz from 13th Street. A lot of the things I had here, you hit a lot of these points. There is a lot of alcohol up on the beach now. The beach, I've been coming here 30 years. My parents lived down here 32 years ago, and I bought in 13 years ago, so I've been here quite a while myself. But the cans, when I go up there, the can's loaded, and it's Colt 45 malt liquor. I mean, I don't think any of my neighbors are drinking that. There's college-age kids I see on the beach playing cornhole, which is okay, but they got USF logo stencil on. They must be college kids that are coming in. Okay, you go in the water and there's people out there roughhousing, throwing footballs around and just trying to, I got my noodle, I stand out there for 2 hours just to relax and you're ducking, these footballs are coming through, okay? A big part of the problem, I think, is the drop-off, okay? Because they're pulling these vans in, or pickup trucks or whatever, and they're only there for a minute or two, but they unload 6 people, and they got the tent or the cabana thing, and they got the coolers, and they got the coolers on wheels and everything. They're dropping them off, and then the guy comes and he runs back to City Hall, and he pays his $3 or whatever, and then they're there, okay? So all this that we're talking about with the access and all this, until we deter them from parking in this lot, you're gonna have, or keep them from doing the drop-off, it's always gonna be that's always gonna be a problem. The other thing is we were up there the other day and there was a number of vehicles that were parked in the lot with no Bel Air Beach stickers on. I live right across the street, so I walked around and I kind of like looked when I said, oh yeah, no sticker, no sticker, no sticker. And the sheriff came up, and she was a real nice young lady. She came up, I said, oh, how you doing? And she said, is that your vehicle? Yeah, no, okay. So then she went down on the beach and she was asking group after group, is that the thing? And she started walking up towards Indian Rocks direction, and finally I guess she found who the one vehicle was or whatever. But if you nail them with a ticket, that would be the end of it, okay? But and I don't mind giving somebody a break, but it's like it's ruining our neighborhood, and that's why you spend a premium delivery. You want to have it nice like it was 30 years ago when I started coming down here, okay? So maybe the deterrent is, I don't know what your restrictions are with this parking over here, but $3 an hour is cheap, and your daily rate, your flat rate, that's a real bargain. I'm from New Jersey, so we used to go to Seaside Heights and pay $30 to park on the thing. So maybe jack that hourly rate up to $10 or something and have no flat rate. Okay, that way if somebody's like, I'm not paying that kind of money, and then they'll go to Clearwater Beach or they'll go and they'll use the meter. Just a couple other little issues that I have. There's people that are coming to fish. And
Sir, we have usually a 3-minute time limit.
Am I over?
Yeah, just wrap it up real fast.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything you can do. There's fishermen that are casting right out in front of the 13th Street access while you're trying to swim and the bait and the stuff's flying over your head, you're going to get hooked. The other thing is people are taking bicycles and chaining them to the benches. Okay? So then when I go up with my wife, I can't sit there because there's handlebars sticking across them. Maybe we can have a bike rack there. If somebody wants to pedal and park their bike in a rack, they can chain it to the rack. Okay? The other thing is there used to be 6 benches. Now there's only 3. We go up to Sunset and half the people have to stand there. Okay, so getting money for a bike rack and a couple benches, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Bring it back to the council. I don't know what else we have to hear, folks. I mean, I've kind of been on this, harping on it since before I was elected. I don't like it, and I haven't steered you wrong yet with any legal advice. I'm not your city attorney. You have a city attorney. He's not here tonight, but he can review this stuff and he's going to come to the same conclusion that I am. This is legal access. It is not a gift from either city. We own the beach. We own the access. Every citizen in this room that I see, I believe, lives east of Gulf Boulevard. And all it takes is one citizen to get annoyed, and we're going to spend a lot more solving this thing. And believe me, you don't want to solve it given the history of this going back to the 1940s with three different deeded easements and how many interlocal agreements and stuff like this. We don't want to do that, okay? I think we've heard some great suggestions. Jack that parking price up, okay? If it's $10 an hour, they're going to spend $80 to come to the beach for a day? I wouldn't, okay? Tollaways, forget about a ticket, a tow. Tow will get your attention. And no second chances, no warnings. Our sheriffs are really nice people. Sheriff folks are really nice, okay? I'm from New Jersey too. I know Seaside Heights. I used to go down to Seaside Heights. If you screw around in Seaside Heights, they arrest you, they throw the book at you. There's no warnings. There is no warnings. So I don't know that we have to be so nice with these folks, okay? This isn't some resident that's doing 2 miles over the speed limit. These are people, we're hearing USF is having parties here. That's affecting my property value, it's affecting all of yours. So I think we got to do something. I don't know where we're gonna take it from here, but obviously we need to talk with Bel Air Shore. I don't think we're gonna have much argument because they're in this, they don't want these folks either, so I can't imagine they're gonna have much issue, but anyway, Vice Mayor.
Okay, I would like to see when we walk out of here tonight, I'd like to have some quick hitter action on
Yeah.
this. Okay, it's quickly approaching the level of a sucking chest wound, and we need to do something about it now. A couple things is that any quick hitter action we take tonight, I think, is easily revocable. If 2 or 3 months we get down the road and say, well, that wasn't that great an idea. So why can't we jack the parking fees out here? Why can't we come up with a towing plan to get people in there to tow out people who aren't Miller Beach residents or have stickers? And why can't our officers, let's stop being so polite that we have to go search the beach for who owns that car in the parking lots. Let's not waste our officers' time. If that car doesn't have a parking sticker, he deserves a ticket. Just write him a ticket. That officer's got better things to do than walk up and down, and I understand the emphasis on community relations and stuff, but they're not our community. You know, we're trying to improve the expectations or work on the expectations of our residents.
Mr. Mayor, I can say this, if the police are worried about their image, well, no one's going to see who writes the ticket. If they just write the ticket and leave it on the windshield, they'll never be seen.
That's right. We don't vote tonight, but I would like to give just the city manager some direction. We've heard 3 very good suggestions. I think it echoes everything we've been hearing. Does anybody else have stuff that we would like to give to the city manager? I mean, the city manager can take this stuff forward and see what reaction we get. I don't want to study this to death personally.
Right.
It's summertime. Next week is Father's Day weekend. Oh, Sheriff, you better bring 2 cars because they're going to have 1 million people back there, okay? We can't have that, okay?
Well, I will tell you, I think people have the misnomer. Since we started charging for this lot, very few people park here. And I can tell you, by looking at the meter intake, very few people park here to go to the beach.
They may not be paying.
No, no, they're paying, especially, you know, some of the weekend, they're paying, they're getting tickets. And you know, I could maybe, and we'll see what happens the 4th of July, but like this weekend, there were a couple cars in this lot, and it wasn't beach people. They were parking behind the building, they paid, they went out here.
And you've seen them bring taxi cabs with people to the
Right,
beach.
and I can't tell where they're going, and maybe these vans that people are seeing, I've never personally seen one, but if there is, maybe they're a taxi van or something, because they're not parking here.
Well, they might be a big vehicle parking here with a load of people, that would then be to the point of, we have people dropping off, because I've seen it. I've been at that access and I've seen them drop off, and I know they parked here.
Well, I think since we instituted the parking fee here, now I will grant, before that, they used to park here all the time. But now that we're charging them, and I'm not advocating that we can't raise the rate here a little more, and will that stop that?
I think we raised the rates everywhere we have the marina. Morgan Street should be twice what it is, but then our parking tickets need to exceed those. Our parking tickets need to be $100 rather than $35. I know we can't do that with Bel Air Shores, that's something you need to talk to them about, but for Morgan Street, for the marina, for here, we need to increase the parking fee and increase our parking ticket rate.
And I've asked this before, is it possible to reduce the maximum time you can purchase on that meter?
Well, I'm sure there's something that you can control,
Like
but
maximum 2 hours?
Well,
It's still a pain to have to go back and forth.
they'd have to go back and forth to do that.
Right.
We could, as an example, we could take the daily rate and say You're just gonna pay on weekends, $4 an hour, there is no lump sum, which was established. You could do the same through the weekday, you know, do that.
But then it becomes then it's up to the sheriff to mark tires and watch how long they're in the space, and they gotta get out and look at the ticket to see if it.
Well, you have to look at the ticket anyway. Even my staff looks at the ticket.
Okay.
I even look at the ticket sometimes on the weekend. I'll go through the parking lot, and I can tell you this weekend, the marina had like 15 cars lined up, all of them paid. Bel Air, or Morgan Street, when I went in there, they were all paid. Later on, the deputy gave a couple tickets in there, but I'm telling you that,
Oh, I'm sure they pay.
well, not everybody does. They think they're gonna, I'm gonna run out to the beach for 10 minutes. I've heard that story, but we don't know how long they've been there.
Right.
So, but I think if we took away the day total fee, that could be a detriment to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a supply and demand, right? So it's huge demand, Morgan Street parking.
And that's a huge
We gotta
revenue.
test the
It's a
market
huge-
and see how much we can get for it.
It's a huge revenue source too.
Yeah, so we jack it up and get more.
Well, you may, or there's diminishing returns.
Well, and it's gonna be a long time before they stop coming. When they go to Clearwater Beach and they're paying $30 to park their lot there, or $40. I mean, some of these lots are ridiculous up there. And
We'll do a survey to find out what they're charging, so we can, you know,
I think we just charge it, we just test it. Why do we have to survey and make such a long process out of
well,
everything?
we can raise the fee and eliminate the day fee. I don't have a problem with that.
What's our current rate?
It's $4 an hour on weekends, $20 for the day. Or $3 an hour on weekdays, $15 for the day.
That's why we're getting people $20 a day. You go to Clearwater and see if you can park for $20. You want
You
to get
can.
3 blocks from, yeah, we're not many places.
The
that-
city parking lot you can.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot more privately owned. My neighbor across the street owns 2 of them, and she jacks them, yeah.
$18 for 2 hours the other day.
Not only that, but, I mean, you walk, what, 30 feet to get to the beach? While at Clearwater, you pay $20, but you're walking 3 blocks across 2 roads, dodging traffic, grabbing a cooler and a toddler, and it's,
And it's the only beach access with a bathroom that the residents can't drive to.
right, exactly. And my thing too is we have to have, going back to Glenn and expectations, even if we solve this parking lot, I've seen people parking at Panera and walking over the bridge with a wagon full of beach toys. So I mean, we're always going to have some. So I don't think any of us should have expectations that we're going to 100% solve the problem. It's more of control, but where there's a will, there's a way. If you think about it, the walk from Panera to this access is probably equivalent to some of the cheaper parking lots in Clearwater and probably safer. So I mean, it's equivalent. So we're not going to stop them all.
No.
Just I don't want any false expectations. When there's a will, there's a way.
Jody, to your point on parking, there's a limit, state statute. Last time I looked, it was $35. I think you can charge a little fee on top of that. So I think we're almost at the maximum. I think Bel Air Shore just raised the parking fine
Oh,
for
the
that. There's a
parking
state,
ticket
there is
fee.
a state maximum, which is why the tollway zone is your solution, because that's a $225, $250 thing, and the towing companies will pay you or not even pay you, but they will put up the sign and they will do it for free because they get to keep all
Monitor
that
the
money.
lots for
Yeah.
us.
It's a great big hassle.
Yeah, and and you enjoyed it, and you know what, and you could go out there and just snap a picture, and if that truck gets you, that was a $225 picture, so enjoy it. Mr. Reeves, I think what you're hearing, and if I can summarize for everyone, because we're going on 8:15 here, ask our sheriff to toughen up, no warnings, no more being nice. Sheriff, you're very nice people, but we're going to ask you to be nice, but give them a ticket nicely. No exceptions, okay? And let's investigate the idea of tollway zone. If you can speak with the folks across the street, that would be great. And investigate, let's try to see if we can't get the parking prices a little bit higher over here, particularly at Morgan. I mean, that is a premium 3 steps to beach access, so you should pay premium for that.
Well, yeah, there's one more thing also, and we discussed it previously, which is actually marking no stopping in front of these drop-off points. to where if the sheriff sees somebody that's stopped, and they know stopping zone, and they're just sitting there dumping out their families so that they can go park somewhere else, maybe it's a tickable offense. I don't
Yes,
know.
absolutely. No stopping or standing, or no parking. So you're trespassing.
Wouldn't you have to take in consideration that you've got the pedestrian crossing right there? So if you hit no stopping, okay, you're telling the guy not to stop for the people crossing or to keep on going? I mean, you know,
I'm
I
sure
just
that
think we need to be
I'm sure that
careful with that.
there's some caveats to that, but
Yeah.
you get my point. It's-
Yeah,
Right.
maybe that would be better than no
Yeah.
stopping, because I can see people blowing on drift and.
Mr.
Do
Reeves?
some experiments.
Yeah. Now, I would like to, again, let's put this, if we could, as unfinished business at the next council meeting, because we are in really one of the peak seasons for usage of the beach. Even though the wintertime we have more visitors, the beach is a lot warmer and a lot nicer right now. And my expectation is, talking about expectations, some of the individuals in Bel Air Shore, if I could, I wish I owned a $5 million house, but if I had a $5 million house and I saw the USF frat boys having cornhole games and drinking beer, okay, and I don't see them anymore, we may just find that maybe they're not so objectionable to have a Bel Air Beach resident put a blanket outside, or Jody Shirley and her granddaughter outside. So I'm guessing if we could get some of the people that really don't care about the beach, I mean, I've seen people urinating on the beach, okay? That is not good outside of a multi-million-dollar house. It's not good out of a $200,000 house. So if we can stop that, then maybe they're not going to be so upset when they see some people in front of their house. Just my thought. Anybody else, did I miss anything here? So we have standing zones, we have toughen it up.
Just can we, like, just to give Lynn some marching orders on the parking fees, can we just discuss that and get that
Sure.
off the plate right now? And just so there's some decisions made, because then you can just bring it to the council meeting, and we're not still back and forth on it. You said the fee is $4 an hour and $20 a day, is that?
We just, what I would suggest initially, we do away with the day fee, and let's see if that helps it. If not, we go a little higher and see if that helps it.
Can we do away with the day fee and go up to $5 an hour?
I don't have an issue with that. That's,
We can't vote on it, but does anybody
I
have
mean-
issues with that? Doesn't sound like it. No issues.
That's still pretty inexpensive.
I'm
I
good
would
with
think
6
that-
or 7 or 8.
I know,
honestly.
$10 I'd rather see, but, I'd rather see 10, so then, 3 hours, I mean, that gives some people time for rotation, and you're not,
well, I think if we do away with the day fee, you're going to see a drop.
Vice Mayor?
Is there going to be any collateral damage? Who are the people who are parking here who would just come in and park for an hour? Are
That's,
they walking the bridge, are they?
they could be, but if you're going to say raise the rates, then you need to do it.
Can you raise the rate on the weekend only?
I
Have a weekend rate versus the weekday rate? I mean,
could.
weekday, we don't mind, walk the bridge all you want, that's great, but it's the week, we're talking about
weekend and holidays.
weekend and holidays are the problems. Next Sunday's gonna be a disaster. It's gonna be a disaster.
Don't say that.
So the other
I'm giving the sheriff a heads up here.
Dads don't get that special treatment, so.
So the other possibility then is, yeah, you can increase the hourly fee, keep the day fee, but just jack it to the maximum. So if you don't want to pay $30 or $35 to park all day, yeah, you can walk back and forth all day.
And
for an hour.
that's
That's
kind of what
$5.
I'm saying. Because we sell a lot of all-day tickets. That's why I'm saying I could do away with the all-day ticket.
Or just jack the day ticket to the very maximum, keep the hourly, increase that to $5 an hour, but then jack that all-day thing to the very max, $30 or $35.
Now, can I pay $15 and buy 3 hours worth? Or do you have to come back each hour and?
No, you can, how the system works right now, you can buy, and this was established a long time ago, even before me. Meter was set up with, there's a hourly rate and there's a all-day rate. And the all-day rate gets you from whatever time you get there to, I think at Morgan it's 9 o'clock. That's what it is. The Marina it's 11. Here it's 11. But the hourly rate is $4. So you can buy 3 hours, you can buy 4 hours. Well, if you're gonna buy 4 hours, you're probably gonna stay there 5, so why would you do that? So what I'm suggesting is you just do away with the daily rate and let them pay whatever the price is.
We have to do this by resolution at the next meeting, or can we?
I'll have to look how those parking fees were established, because we haven't changed any since I've been here, so.
That's why they're so cheap.
That's why they're so cheap.
But I think.
Well, I don't think they're cheap. They're comparative to the other city parking areas.
They need to hit that, what our current daily rate is in a short amount of time, like in 3 hours or so. I don't think, or 4 max. What you're saying right now, to do that, they'd be there 5 hours. That's most of the day to hit the $20.
No, I'm saying do away with the daily rate.
I know, so if we get rid of that, I'm still saying, they're still there 5 hours, I think we need to try to get them down to a 3 or 4 hour window.
You're not gonna control that.
I know, but if you hit the price, you're missing the point. The price has to be steep enough that they want to leave after 3 to 4 hours, so.
And I understand that, but I think we need to look at that incrementally. You can shoot yourself in the face because
It's a test.
it's
If
a
it-
lot of revenue you're throwing out the door.
I am telling you, you show up with your family, you're putting whatever it costs to pay to stay for the weekend. I mean, I just don't, I disagree with you completely on that. I know what I pay when I go to downtown St. Pete, when I go anywhere, I pay a premium to park. And I go to any parking garage, I pay a premium. If it's an event I want to be at, I'll pay whatever it costs to
Right,
park.
I understand that.
So,
We can change this either way. I mean, it's not irrevocable. I mean, let's start, which direction you want to go? You want to go to the max and work our way back, or you want to start?
No, what I was suggesting, we raise it to $5, forget the daily, and you pay $5, and we'll see where it takes us. If it doesn't impact us, then you go higher.
And those meters are always operating.
Time you can prepay for?
Huh?
Is there,
2 hour max is what we should put it, like a 2 hour max, like they do in St. Pete.
That's what I like.
yeah, so you have to come back and.
You have to come back.
Yeah, we can probably do that. I'll talk to Calais, that's our parking provider.
We'll also let Captain Liner, Captain Liner again, Captain Liner I know isn't the problem, but he's got to communicate to all of his deputies that we need business. I'm going to be out there Sunday, okay? I'm giving you a heads up. I might be incognito, but I'm going to be out there, and I'm going to be checking. And I better not see a thing of no stickers. I mean, I want to see tickets.
Well, I will tell you, some of our residents have gotten a ticket because they didn't renew their beach sticker.
That's...
And it cost them $45 because we don't have any control over Bel Air Shores tickets.
That's fine.
And they came in here not happy, but it has happened, several.
Picture of the sticker, at least on 6th Street, there's a picture of the sticker right on the sign, and it says you need to have one of these. And I remember going up to Boston, and it says you need to have a resident A permit, and you can't say, I think the sheriff told me one time that somebody said, well, I'm a resident of Florida. That's not what we mean, okay? We mean Bel Air Beach, and so, if you want to play lawyer, that's fine, you're going to still get a $45 ticket. So,
And a few of our residents have gotten those tickets.
yeah,
Coming here, not very happy.
buy a sticker. Okay, we killed this one? I think we have. It is now 8:30, we've been going for 2.5 hours. I need a little bit of a break for a few minutes, because we have about 4 more items left to go here. So, would anybody mind, we do about a 10-minute break, and then we reconvene? So it's 8:25, let's say, so 8:35 we get back, okay? We're now on what used to be item number 5, it's now item 6. Discuss go-to meeting for future meetings, Vice Mayor Gunn.
Same sort of thing. What is the expectation? What is the level of service that we think we need to provide now under the new reality? And people are starting to get interested. They saw the benefits of being able to call into a meeting before, and not everybody can attend anymore. So what services do we need to provide? Do we need to be thinking about technology upgrades? How are we going to manage this?
So you're in favor of exploring these options, is that what you're?
I think we need to. I think Lee Reeves has had some discussions with Victor
Yes.
along these lines, and, maybe you can wave the wand over Victor and say, you're our coordinator, you sit in the back with your little headset and manage the people calling in, and when the mayor says, are there any citizens' comments, if somebody says, yeah, I want to say something, Victor raises his hand and says, I've got caller so-and-so on.
I believe, I spoke with Victor also. He's instrumental, I believe, in working with Indian Rocks right now. They're looking into doing something similar. In fact, they're not holding their meetings in person. They're doing everything virtual. But I think this whole idea of doing these things virtually, not that we're going to replace our regular council meetings, but it gives a lot of options to people if you're not in town. And it also allows all the citizens to come in. We had talked, I know before I came on council, prior council actually was talking about streaming. I think even test streamed one time a meeting. It didn't work out the greatest, but this is an option of doing it. The only thing I would say, I love the idea, I'm totally great with it, but this technology with this GoToMeeting, June and I used it last time to come in, and apparently it hurt us pretty well, because I saw the quotes that came out, and everybody seemed to get them pretty accurate. But man, that was difficult to hear you. It was really hard. Zoom is a much superior thing. I think I mentioned that we use it on the training. I'm going to be having a training in 2 days. I'll be in New Jersey, but I'm going to be here. And we have 200 attorneys on the line, so none of us are technologically expert. But it works great. And you have, in the bottom, you actually, and the way they have it set up, you can actually type your questions to the moderator. So the moderator sees it, and you can type to everybody. Yes, I know there's been some incidents where some people hijack these things, and that's one of the risks, but we could have the same risk over here. We could cut off a person who is doing something inappropriate. I mean, I heard a couple people, I'm not even going to mention it because I don't give people ideas, but there are some people who did some stuff that they shouldn't be doing online, and I'm not thinking the Bel Air Beach residents are going to be doing that kind of stuff. So,
We're doing some research, and I've talked to Victor, because we're actually going to be doing some changing in here with the overhead projector, some rewiring, so we'll explore that a little further and see how that goes, because we may have to probably purchase a computer equipment, buy some, where he's at. We'll have to figure out how that phone would work into the computer, but we'll research that a little further.
and we still have a state of emergency for the state, and they've opened up grant money for people who are reacting so that they can do this, okay? An idea, just to throw out, I don't know if you can wedge it in somehow, but buying this new equipment somehow in response to this pandemic, because we may be able to get it, and what you use it for afterwards, obviously, is just extra for us, so we might be able to upgrade, because I know our system's kind of old here, we don't even have the monitors anymore at the front and stuff, so.
We're going to research that a little more, because we're trying to, what we want to do with this overhead is be able to use Wi-Fi and into it, so connect it into our Wi-Fi system, and clean out that cabinet there where the old TV stuff was. So we've been working on that.
So does Victor have experience doing this? Do we need to call in someone who does have experience doing it? Because it sounds like a lot of times we're piecing things together and taking a less expensive route and maybe don't get the deliverable that we're expecting because we don't want to spend that money out front, and in the end it probably costs us as much because we put in a lot more hours trying to figure out why it didn't work rather than getting it done right in the first place.
Well, I need to, Victor is doing something with Indian Rocks, but I don't know specifically what he's doing.
I do, I mean, he's basically, Indian Rocks is, somebody turn that, thank you. Indian Rocks is not doing their meetings in person, so they basically told him, from what I was told, make this work and get it done, and we don't care what it costs, basically. So I think he has the technology that if he wants to, he could be streaming this thing and broadcasting it via the Zoom or whatever platform.
I think the problem was sound,
Yes.
so we get back to these microphones have to connect to a soundboard that he can run through. The system is using whichever.
Correct. You pretty much have to have a producer. I know that's probably a big word for Bel Air Beach, but somebody who actually puts a production together, who actually controls whose voice is being streamed online. The problem is not whenever you're doing, everybody's remote. The problem is whenever you have a local group with a remote scenario. Even with just about every format that we've looked at, if you have somebody calling in, you can even control and queue up who's actually has the mic and who's not stepping on other people. But at the end of the day, you've got to have somebody that knows where to click and how to queue up those people, and that's where the problem exists. Also, again, if you've got, say there's 5 of us here and the rest of us are elsewhere, well, the elsewhere people are great talking to each other, but not so much talking to the group and vice versa. And so it's almost like there's no perfect scenario without spending some money on equipment and somebody to actually conduct the meeting.
Dave, to your point, when we do this with the attorneys, now all of us are remote, there's nobody actually in any one place. But there is one person, she calls herself the mute police now, because with Zoom, whatever noise happens, if your dog is barking and you're not the person who's really supposed to be talking, they're going to put you on camera and you're going to get the showcase, and you don't want that. So they basically mute everybody. Now remember, this is continuing education, so this is a little different than what we have here, but not that much different. One person should be talking at once, and that person, everybody else is pretty much muted. And then if you want to speak, most of the times if you want to speak or just ask a question, it's typed in.
Right.
But you do have the option of doing it, and also what was really neat is you can take over and produce a screen. So like Glenn Gunn just did this nice presentation for us. Let's say Glenn was home tonight because he couldn't come in for some reason. With Zoom, I don't know about this GoToMeeting, but with Zoom, he could have done that and just pushed the button, and we would have been on his computer. He would have been just as good as standing here. So I think that this gives us a lot of stuff. I'll tell you where it really comes into play, okay? I hope I don't know if we're working through this pandemic yet, but if we ever get a hurricane, and we're not sitting in this building for a couple of months, okay? This allows this council to meet from wherever we are. Wherever we disperse to, we could meet.
Well,
It's a good idea. It's a great thing.
Zoom and GoToMeeting, you know,
They're just alike, they
They're-
both have
they're
the same features.
same
It's just
features.
if you pay for it or not.
It's just the interface is different, that's all.
that's really the only difference. I mean, you can still do that with GoToMeeting, still,
Yeah, I
you know,
just.
but you gotta have the equipment to be able to do all that stuff. And, you know, I'll have some more discussion with Victor about what he can and can't do and clarify what he's doing for new
That'd be
routes.
great. Patty, what am I going to say? Unfinished business on the next council meeting. Let's follow up on this, okay? Yes.
I'm just going to say at the kickoff meeting for the communications, Dave is a member that he acknowledged the fact that he's got a quick hitter for his first report to give us some quick hitter solutions to this very issues.
And I believe we're still under the governor's order, which allows people to commute, into a meeting right now. The normal restrictions are much tighter. Generally, they like when council members are present. And there is an option. We did it
Right.
last year during the budget because we were deadlocked. You can do it for some reasons like that, but normally they want people to be present. Right now, you don't have to be. So it actually gives, people some options over here if you're coming into the summer season. They wouldn't miss your budget presentation or something like that if they couldn't be here for some reason. So, again, sooner than later would be wonderful on this. Victor, I know, is working on this, and
Yeah.
that'd be great. We have any comments on the citizens? John Hanzik? Getting a workout tonight, huh?
John Hanzik, 22nd Street. If I may, a word of caution about Zoom. In the last 7 or 10 days, I believe it was on Fox News, Zoom has affiliations with the Chinese government. There's a way that they can monitor everything that's going through Zoom. So if that's an option you consider as a possible solution for communications, I'm just asking y'all, use some caution. I mean, we don't have top secret classified information, but still, just a caution. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim? If you could solve my parking problem, I'd be happy to stream it, Joe. So,
Kim Vanscoy, 7th Street, Bella Beach. I use Zoom for a couple of my ladies' meetings. We do it once a month, and it's worked out great. We mute it, we raise our hand when we want to speak, and the person who hosts the meeting basically runs it. The other thing is, our neighbor works for Baycare, they're an IT person. They said they like Skype better. Skype is the next step up from Zoom. So there's another option. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. It might work on the ladies group. I would tell you, I would not want to try and be the producer, as Dave calls it. You really do need to have somebody separate who can just be monitoring just that. It's too much to, it's hard enough to just run a meeting as it is. I think everybody who's done this has see it. So it would be hard for me to be looking at a computer screen because I wouldn't even be looking at the speaker. It wouldn't work, I think, for the host of this meeting to be, and any of our meetings, and if we use it with the other ones.
We've talked to a couple of the other cities that tried even the city clerk doing it, and it was not a good thing. She can't be taking stuff and participating in the meeting.
I'm with Dave. I think you need a separate producer, if you will. Yeah. Any other comments? So takeaway is going to be that, boy, Lynn, you're getting a lot of work here. So tonight you got.
The staff's.
You should have worn a mask and get it hid. All right, so you know what you got to do. So we're going to get back to us for the next council meeting, and let's see what Victor's capable of maybe doing for us, or if we need someone else. And then take a look at that grant stuff too, if we could maybe use that money.
I do have one more comment. During that last meeting, Mayor, you were not here, and we had discussed that if you weren't here, that you would allow Glenn to be the chair. And it turned out kind of being a mixed bag, but switching back and forth. And overall, I'd say the meeting went pretty well, but there were a few moments where I thought it was confusing, and you couldn't hear what we were saying, or we didn't understand what you were saying, and I would prefer that one person be the chair during the entire meeting, and I'd also prefer that that person be here on site if the majority of the council members are on site. That's just my comments.
Yeah, and I think we can do better than we're doing right now, which is basically like a speakerphone. This is like so 80s. So, I know we use flip phones still in our city, but it's time to get into the 2000s. This should be crystal clear. It's digital. It should be crystal clear. I had to have that phone in my office cranked to the max in my ear, and I have good hearing, and I can barely hear some people, particularly some folks who like to stay back from the mic. You got to talk. These mics are good for about 1.5 inches, and so. I think we could improve on it. It might make it easier. I expect to pretty much be here, but I can't guarantee you that. I might not be at every one of the meetings. I may not be available some weekend or something like that some weeks. So, see what we can do. Okay, anything else on this topic? Okay, moving right along then. What used to be item 6, which is discussing the revisions to the strategic plan, also Vice Mayor Glenn. Done.
I'll defer to the city manager.
Mayor and Council, we've given you a handout with some proposed objectives for the coming year that we'll assign to staff. We'll start with Goal 1, the objectives, address and work on mitigating the flood issues. That's one of them. Objective 2 is to follow up and review the code gaps, and that's what I was talking about. Code review, and to follow that, we mentioned this earlier, the seawall, we need to address that, but that's more a beach and natural waterfront. Develop a master plan for streetlight replacement. We've been saving money to do things. The city contributed to the solar street lighting. That was the agreement that was made with the undergrounding, that we would contribute the cost, and we did do that. But we also talked about eventually getting rid of the wood poles and replacing them with concrete poles or solar if some of the neighborhoods wanted to participate. I've given you tonight, a couple graphs. This is the pavement index, and the first one with the box crisscrossed, drop down, it says MAP and IRI, highlighted in the blue up in the upper left-hand corner. What that is a pavement condition by vibration. You're driving down the street, it picks up the vibrations in the street, and then it gives us data, which I'll explain. The second sheet is a survey of what we call the distressed areas, and it picks up things like patches, cracks, potholes, wherever there's rutting in the street. So, if you sit down and look at the vibration, the worst streets are in that darkest red. Bellevue Estates Island is the projected area we're going to work on because that was set up in the budget for this coming year, or this year, current year. And they have a lot of reds and oranges, a little bit of yellow. We have received a quote for doing the pavement of BEI and 22nd Street entirely, and it's about $171,000. The curb work in that area, unfortunately, we don't have enough funding to do it all. We're meeting with the contractor tomorrow to have a discussion on what we can do, and we'll be coming back to the council to talk about that. But in the coming fiscal year, we need to look at, there's a strip on Belle Isle which takes us down to the Hibiscus. Yeah, it's between Gulf Boulevard and Hibiscus. That's an area that needs work. We're going to look at, and we've got a quote already, but unfortunately we didn't have enough funding for Harrison. That's another street that's in rough shape, totally from Gulf Boulevard. Between Harrison and Bel Air Shore, Hibiscus, that's another area. The areas down here around Causeway that need work, 12th and 13th are on the stormwater project for next year, so we'll look at doing some of that work as we do that. And we don't want to pave a street and then a year or two later tear it up. So how we look at prioritizing these, and for the budget, eventually we're going to prioritize these streets to say, okay, we're going to pave this street, pave that street in the scheme of things. But I think we have to look at, if we're doing a stormwater project, then that pavement needs to be done at that time, as opposed to just because, and I'm going to use off of Causeway, if you look at Cedar and Spruce, they came in pretty rough in the pothole distressed area, but we've got a stormwater project in a couple years, so I'm not advocating paving something and then I'm going to dig the street up. I think that's a mistake of wasting our resources. So this is the first blush at the pavement condition index that we purchased. It's a software program. We set the iPad up in the truck. We did try a rendition on the curbs, but that didn't work. At least we tried. We tried it with the truck, we tried it with the cart, but it just didn't pick up the undulations in the curbs. So this is just to give you some information, and if you want more detailed discussion, I'll be glad to sit down with you. Kyle is my expert on this. Going forward, we're going to use this, as you can see at the southern end of the city. They're green because they've been paved. And So we've been doing that with stormwater projects. So I think going forward, there's some streets that aren't going to get a stormwater project. And I'm going to use Harrison as one of them. We need to go ahead and pay that at some point in time. And hopefully in next fiscal year's budget, we'll have enough to do that.
And do you have an idea, that chart that you did with the stormwater, that was great, because you could see, you know, if a resident asks you, when's my street gonna get done, you can say, right here, you know, you have a pretty good estimate. I know you said you were putting.
We're gonna try to do.
I was gonna say, what's your timetable to get into that type of an idea?
Well, my focus in the next 2 or 3 weeks is the budget, so it'll be after that. Because, you know, we've got budget presentations and things. You're going to see a different look to the budget also. It's not going to look like last year's. It's going to be a little more condensed, but you'll also get backup documents. But it won't be part of the actual budget itself. It'll be for your information purposes, so you can see what you're spending your money and what we're doing. But complete different look, and I think you'll be pleased with that. So this would be a project for, I'd say later in this year, we can start on.
Fine. I just think it would be very helpful if we had that to all those citizens, if somebody catches any one of us, you know, and says, what about me? It's like, yeah, we got you for
Well,
2023, you know.
we've got a map. You know, even this thing that we did with the beach, you know, I think we ought to put it online and, you know, people can say, hey, I got ran off the beach, well, I got 30 feet or something, if they want to argue about it.
That's a good observation though, because the goal is to have something like this, and then he starts putting them all together. If you look under goal 3 here, objective 2, developing a budget and brief. Budget and brief is basically a picture of what's going on, you know, an easily comprehensible picture, and that's part of this. And
Yeah.
That's just what he's working towards.
By charting it out, you know, like now Lynn probably can do it off the top of his head, but we could explain this to people like you just said with Cedar. Somebody sees me on Cedar and says, why am I not getting it? I'll tell you why you're not getting it. You're getting stormwater fixed first, then you're going to get a street. So we did, I think, in Alita and you know, in Donato, it got all dug up because of the undergrounding. Now we go back and pave it, and it'll be beautiful, and as opposed to paving it and then tearing it up. I agree with you.
Yeah, you're just spending money for nothing, you know.
And then the flip side is when you hear the resident that goes, BEI is getting a lot of attention, why aren't the other streets getting any attention? You
What?
know, you get the resident asking the question, BEI is getting a lot of attention, why aren't we getting any, you know, at the other end
Well-
of town? And you get those questions quite frequently. And I know half of you all live there, so this is not a jab at you guys, but that question has come about, so,
Well, those streets were scheduled
I know.
before I even came here.
I know.
And I will
You and
tell
I
you.
had this conversation, because I asked you, because that question was
Right. And-
presented to me.
Yeah, and you know, I told the people, even on the undergrounding committee, no, I'm not spending any money until we get this finished, because what if I tear this up, what if I tear that up? That to me is just wasted money, and I don't think we should be doing that. And, you know, I think I could show people that they asked, because it was in the budget, that said, okay, Donato, Alita, 22nd Street, we're going to get paid like 3 years ago, and then this undergrounding came along. So, going on, the communications committee has started. They had their get-together meeting, and Dave's the secretary. He volunteered, I want everybody to know that.
Never volunteered, Dave.
Trust me, I didn't want to. It was either me or nobody.
There you go. Thank you.
Leslie Notaro is the chairman. Their next meeting is the 24th. And they started some good conversation just initially. I think they'll bring that back at the next meeting. The budget and brief, Glenn mentioned, we're going to investigate the parking lot at the marina, and that'll be in a discussion with Swift Mud to see what we can and can't do there as far as improving it, instead of having it as, I'll call it the Dust Bowl, maybe. So we'll look into that. This council needs to tell me, and we'll bring you some more video of the signage, but we need to resolve this digital, non-digital sign, communications, and that's something that I want to take to the communications committee, and we'll bring you something back. Because I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding of where the digital sign or a new sign for City Hall could go. I don't say it has to be digital, it could be something else. But we get a lot of comments about not being able to read the current sign.
I thought it was left, you were gonna bring us back some renderings, and I never saw anything.
We put a couple renderings, I don't remember, it's been a month or so ago, but it was just pictures of what the font would be. So what I'm working on now is getting a video, so, because they didn't.
I just need a picture of this, I mean, like a proof they would present to you before they make a sign. I used to own a sign company, it's really not that difficult. And that's what we didn't have anything like that, and I think we need it dimensioned so we actually know how big we're talking about. They can stand a guy next to it, like here's a 6-foot man, here's what the sign size is gonna look like.
Okay, well, the concept that was brought to you was to use what we have, okay, as far as a sign. Basically, all it was gonna do is replace where the letters are right now. And it was gonna be a digital insert into that sign. That's what it was gonna be. And that's what was brought to you, and I don't know if it had a picture.
It just was very confusing. None of us had any idea what you were asking us for.
Right.
That's,
So, but the question that was asked was, well, what type of media is it? I don't want, I'm trying to think of one. The Largo Arts Center used to have a sign that spun around. Well, it's digital, but it was like something you saw on TV. And I think all we were trying to get to is something that's readable and something that we can change remotely, and it's visible from the street. So all we were trying to do is re-image that sign. So what I'm trying to get is a video from the manufacturer that will actually show you what that font is, and we'll try to get a picture of that and put the sign in it so you see that. That should, we ought to be able to just drop that on a picture of that sign. But that's what the proposal was. It wasn't to rebuild a brand new sign. It was just as an information board. So we'll be coming back to you so we can resolve that issue. The seawalls, we've got that, and we had a lot of discussion about the beach access issues, and we'll have some more discussion with Miller Shore about that and see what their thoughts are. So there is a list behind that with other items. Some of them are pretty quick hit stuff that, they really aren't goals, they're just stuff we need to follow up on. As an example, the pandemic response. The traffic, the mayor and I have beat that to death. And I will say that, we still have the opportunity to go to the traffic, how they control the traffic in the county. And when you feel comfortable wanting to go, just let me know and I'll try to schedule something.
They still owe us a couple responses on minor things. We talked about trying to maintain speed we're the only city in the world that has people going too slow, but maintain the speed on Gulf Boulevard, particularly out by 17th, 18th Street, because that's where it bottlenecks. That was one of the suggestions. And then you and I had talked to him, is there any possibility of without physically widening lanes, does it even make sense to widen lanes? But we're done. I mean, I don't think there's
Yeah.
any more good suggestions on what we can do. So unfortunately, what we have is what we have right now.
Right, and I sent everyone a copy of the trips, and I think I explained that at a meeting what those mean. Those mean the daily trips, you know, averaged on an annual basis. And if you look at those, many years ago, we had more trips than we have today. Now, those are always behind a year because the data is always behind, but he gave us up to, I think it was 2018, if I remember right. But, the stormwater fee, that's another thing that's progressing, and that'll be on your next agenda. So, for the second reading. And about 5 o'clock today, I got email from Chris Rowe and the printer, so hopefully this mailing will go out the next day or two. And what we're doing is sending the postcard, telling everyone about the public meeting and the effect on that. Something that the council needs to do, they need to follow up on officially accepting the Planning and Finance Committee reports. You did it at a work session, so we may put something on the agenda in July that just says council accepts these. And so they're officially accepted. And then there's some things in a couple of those reports that, you know, we need to resolve. Does the council have any interest in the Finance Committee in raising the rental registration? If that's the case, then we need to do that, if the council has that.
And you're going to bring that up at the budget meetings for us? Is that where we can discuss that? Because I mean, that was a, you know, what's Glenn calling quick hitters. I mean, that's quick revenue. We can get a lot of it. And
Yeah,
you know,
that
I'd be
only-
surprised if everybody wasn't unanimous on this one. So
And that only has to change by resolution, and so we can do that rather quickly. Now, I have not built any of that into the budget. In the budgets that you're going to get, I have, I guess, looked at my crystal ball and said the stormwater fee is probably going to be approved, and I've added that into the budget, so you will see that. If something happens it's not, then we'll have to punt and do some modifications to the budget. But I've set it up as its own department, because it's considered what I call an enterprise fund. It's a separate entity, and the only thing that can come out of that budget is stormwater. So everyone in the city understands that it won't be spent on Band-Aids or anything like that. It's going to be spent on stormwater only, and it will be a separate fund. And we'll move the valley curves in there and the stormwater projects. So it'll show a negative, and we'll have to take some funds and put in there for the projects. But that will help with the long term.
Is there any discussion right now of the rental registration increase? I mean, is there any,
I was going to say, can we just move forward with it?
Can
Can
we
we
put
have
it
it
on
on
for
the
the next
agenda?
agenda? I mean,
I don't think,
yeah. Because we have, I
what we need
mean,
to do and incorporate it into your budget planning?
yeah, that'll give us extra money, and you'll at least know it's coming, instead of us waiting till August or September. You can know about it right now, and it helps us with decisions. So
Well, if the consensus is, then I'll ask the city attorney to prepare a resolution to modify.
do you have any initial objections to that?
What the proposal was, just to refresh everyone's memory, not menu,
Think about those computers.
yeah, was to raise it from 100 to 300 annually. And that is collected on our fiscal year, so if we raised it, it would start October 1st in our mailing that we send out in September.
And was the consensus and recommendation of the finance?
That's great. It was. So,
Let's put it on for the next meeting as a line item, and we should be able to
we'll
approve
vote,
that.
right?
Get it right in your budget.
okay.
You don't anticipate any pushback or legal pushback on that? I mean, there's going to be, yeah. Renters are going to be kind of just talking about it.
I think we'll get a little pushback from the people that rent, but We'll see at this point. I mean, the rental fees from when it started have become exorbitant here, so I don't think it's just part of doing business.
What do other cities charge? That would help too, if we could get a little survey of, what some of the other comparables.
I don't know that a lot of the other cities do that, that I've seen. But we can make a couple calls and see if there are.
Okay.
The technology, we're working on that, but that's something the staff is moving forward. It's kind of like the glass window we put over there that some of you would probably have never seen, but there is a glass window over there. So, Mayor, you can't jump.
Whose idea was that? Thank you. Took you a year, but I appreciate it.
You can't jump the.
I can't jump it anymore now.
Yeah, and having gave up a raise to put bulletproof in, no.
As it should be.
So, and then the other things that we've kind of put here as quick hitters are, of course, the beach access, and we talked about the sign. So, if the council has anything they want to change or add to it, this is where we're at for next fiscal year. So,
Council, any further discussion? I hear this, and I got to tell you, I'm a newcomer, still only been a year and a half into this thing, and hung around for about half a year before that, but this council has made incredible strides. You just look at this stuff, I don't think anybody even dreamed of this stuff happening a couple of years ago, certainly a decade ago, and we're nailing this stuff one by one. And it's going to take time to fix all the problems, but we are on our way with this stuff, so really good job for everyone. Any citizens' comments? No? Okay. We'll finish with that item. I'm going to move on to item 8, which is my item. It's not going to be a long discussion. There's more information. Discuss on-street parking. I really don't have a discussion. It was just a letter that I got from a resident, and the situation was he has a house outside the condos, and I guess some parking passes were issued during the weekend, which allowed people to park on his street. And he said, is this going to be something that happens every holiday? And I went back to the ordinance and I looked, and our ordinance doesn't really address it. So I just threw it to the council just so that you had information on it. It seems, it's the only letter that we've received. I know you, Lynn, I don't know if you responded to him.
yes, I did.
Okay, and then I'll just throw it to you to what happened, but I just wanted everybody to know what was going on.
Yeah, basically, this condo owner has done this for years. On the holiday weekend, she's asked for 2 or 3 parking places on a street, across the street. Our ordinance is not real clear about condos. It says that, if one of us that lives in a residential home, if we want to have a special function, all we got to do is fill out a street parking, and we can do that. And in this case, we accommodated this condo owner. She was very proactive, and she always has been, because she's done it probably for, to my understanding, many, many years. And this is the first time we ever had a complaint. And the picture I got, it was 2 cars.
Yeah.
But the complaint was, they were parking on that street, across the street. So, I don't know, do we want to make a separate rule for the condos, or do we want to just...
I personally would not be happy if it was parked in front of my house. I think that we provide ample parking around the city for condos that don't have overflow parking somewhere. They can park at the marina at City Hall and escort their guests back to their place, provide transportation, but I just think that it's a bad, I understand her case, she handles it the way she should, but, and she was given the okay, but I don't, if she was parked in front of my house, I wouldn't be happy. So I think we need to be consistent with that. We allow for residents that live on that street to maybe get a special permit, but condos have their own parking lots, and they have visitor parking spaces. And if they can't accommodate them, then they need to park them at the marina or at City Hall where they can accommodate.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear, what you,
Do we know how many visitor parking spots they have at the condos? I mean,
No.
is it something, like, I mean, I've been in condos where there's like
They have all their own rules, you know, they do everything that
everybody, you know, my understanding, just, because I had a discussion with the lady this year, because she wanted it for like more days than I was willing to give her. And she told me that her condo has like, each condo gets maybe one guest space. Well, you know, so I guess how I look at it, if we want to follow what the ordinance says, the ordinance talks about residences, it does not talk about condos. And for the most part, when a condo, we'll use their parking lot resurfaced, we give them a pass to park in the marina overnight. So going forward,
give
unless,
her a free parking pass for the marina for her guests for
I
a
have
day.
to- I
For
have
one,
to agree.
you know,
The marina's
that's,
a better solution, nobody's inconvenienced at that. I'll play Fred Riley for a second, I don't have nearly as much hair, but Fred says that you gotta follow your own ordinances.
Right.
And either we have to amend this ordinance, or I think the marina's an excellent solution, and that takes care of it, and nobody's upset, and it's not gonna bother anyone.
yeah, we've never, this is the first time we've ever had a complaint about this. And it was done last year for that holiday, no complaint.
I think where the problem should be noted is if it's overnight parking,
No, it's not.
just during the day.
Yeah, that's all it was. It was not overnight parking.
I guess I don't see as big of a deal, because what's the difference if somebody from the condo had a party and they parked versus like Glenn had a party and his guests parked in front of mine? I mean, do we consider the condo residents Bel Air Beach residents?
Yeah,
Yeah, wait a minute.
yeah.
So is the Bel Air Beach resident ordinance?
have you ever tried to drive through one of those condo
You
parking
can't
lots?
park there.
Well, I never.
I mean, just drive through to check
Yeah.
on your kids on the beach.
Well, no, I won't.
They rip you. Everyone is standing on their balcony telling you to get out of the parking lot. So I'm just telling you that, I don't like anyone parking in front of my house. It's a problem on here, so we have a lot of construction, a lot of stuff going on down there all the time. And there's no need to have unnecessary parking in your neighborhood.
I mean, to me, I guess if it was one day out of the year for a few hours, but if it was gonna be like 5 days in a row, that's a problem.
No, our ordinance even says that, like, if you want to have a party at your house, you can ask for parking.
And now maybe we have to modify the ordinance, because you and I have come up with a good solution. I think that we started with the festival, and we've used it for the garage, the yard sale, and also you and I just spoke about people with parties. Basically, you can only park on one side of the street now. We don't want you having a party that crosses both sides of the street. So maybe we have to modify it. Again, I'll throw my support to this idea of the marina. I think it's good, and I have tried to go to the condos, and you take your life in your hands if you're doing it, so it's not good.
Don't drive through the parking lot.
Don't come here. You would think we're not Bel Air Beach.
I have something that I'd like to bring up about this. Is this our official format?
No.
Can I just write that down? Because that's to keep me from just writing anything down and parking anywhere I want to.
The lady was supposed to come to City Hall and get these passes because we fill them out. So what she did, she didn't get here in time. She's a condo owner. She doesn't live here, she lives in Tampa. And she didn't get here in time. So that's what she used, because she talked to Laura about getting passes.
Well, shouldn't she fill out that same parking ordinance or form
But
that we
people-
do? That one that goes to the sheriff, so the sheriff could say, hey, there's a parking
There,
allowance.
and there was. She filled that out.
Okay.
She called in. We allow residents to call. They don't have to bring it here, and then we fax it to the sheriff.
See, here's the way I think this should go down. Anybody, any resident or homeowner, condo owner, whoever, anyone that is eligible for guests to park in the street, they need to come down to City Hall. They need to obtain those passes, whatever it is that we want to display in the cars. Then it's their responsibility to hand them to the people as they show up at their residence. So that way there's some control on it and you don't have to guess who it is. This should never fly. Honestly, if I was this guy back here and I saw this in somebody's car, I would shake.
Well, I mean, I disagree with going to get individual passes for each one of your guests, because what happens if I assume 3 and a husband and wife drove separate because one had to leave early and now it's 4?
Well, they don't
You
come,
have to do that.
they don't come to get a pass per se.
Right.
They just get a copy of what we sent them if they, yeah.
Right.
We don't give them, the only people that get passes is like temporary, like you've got a guest here for a couple of weeks and you want them to have a temporary pass to go to the beach.
What I'm kind of getting at is check into a hotel, they give you something that hangs on your mirror and they write in the date that you're allowed in and the last date you're allowed to stay.
Well, then we need to modify what we're doing and tell the homeowners that you can't email that into me because you won't have a tag.
I think that's a lot more trouble for Patty, a lot more paperwork, a lot more resources, and I think that the sheriff has the paper that's faxed over saying that, hey, they said about up to 10 cars for these 3 hours for my kid's birthday party, well then one side of the street, that's fine. Obviously, if the party goes 8 hours, then all right, you need to move your cars. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think we need to put a post-it. As long as the sheriff had that email from you guys or from her, the fax, it should have been adequate and they could have said, well, we have the record that they're allowed to have 3 cars, so they said 3 hours, they should have gone by 5.
I'm going to agree with Councilmember Dr. Autry on all of that, because you never know how many people are going to show up, like she mentioned. Plus, they wouldn't have needed to even put that in their car, because she already had street parking permission. The sheriff would not have done anything. So there was no need for them to put that in their vehicle. I'm not even sure why they bothered, but if we start changing that, we've had issues with parking on the street for a year and a half now here. And, you know, we keep trying to adjust everything. There's a parking ordinance. As a person that owns property here, when I'm having an event, I call to get permission. These people have already parked and come to the event. Now that I'm going to have to hand them all a sticker and then they go all the way back. And plus the cost to incur an additional time for Patty is
So
crazy.
let me ask you something. Your last big party you had, that you had cars in the street, how many cars, what's the biggest party you've ever had?
Most of the time when I have an event at my house, people are walking. So normally you're looking at maximum probably 10. Now when I have the event here, I book and pay for the entire parking lot. So that it doesn't matter how many. I have 140, 150 here. Well, I did have. I'm not going to rent the facility anymore, but at my house, most of them walk. I mean, you know, it's a couple blocks.
Well, the only reason why I'm even bringing this up at all is because this is the guy here that's supposed to know how many cars are coming, and do I allow this craziness in this neighborhood? I've got a neighbor a few doors down the street from me that every weekend, you know what I'm talking about, every weekend you can barely get through. Well, this guy, is he supposed to be checking his email every time he passes through our neighborhood and sees a car parked there? I'm just thinking that there should be a better way to control it than what we're doing. And I'm sorry if it's a burden on you, Patty, but I just think we can do that.
Patty doesn't do that, it's Laura.
And to your point, Indian Rocks Beach has a huge issue of beach visitors, beachgoers parking on the street. I mean, it won't be long until it starts spilling over to First and then, you know, working its way up. I mean, I think that it's probably a good, again, maybe something we need to put, you know, a plan in place, but have some, address it somehow, so that we don't turn into Indian
Well,
page.
to answer Dave's question, I had a birthday party, I don't know, 4 years ago for my son, I don't remember, and there was probably about 10 cars. And one person parked, instead of on one side of the street, parked on the other. The sheriff told us, I told him to move, it's fine. It was, and I had told them it was gonna be 10 cars, and my theory is if at this location, if there's 12 cars and the sheriff's not sure, he goes to the house and says, hey, I just wanna let you know, that you have them on the other side of the street and somebody moved. Totally cool, and they're totally awesome about it. So I don't see it as a problem. I mean, I don't think we're having big keg ragers every weekend here in Bel Air Beach where there's 30 cars. I don't think it's an issue. Now, if you go down 3rd Street and there's 5 cars parked there and people are walking to the beach and there is no email telling the sheriff ahead of time that there's allowed parking, well then, take it away.
Okay, so let me throw this back at you. Rather than emailing the sheriff, why don't you email all of your guests and say, print this out and put it in your car?
Sure. You can do that too if you want to, but I'm just saying that I don't think you need to. Because then he's going to have to be like, oh, look, there's a piece of paper in that one, a piece of paper in that one, or drive by, okay, there's 5 cars, they said they could have up to 10, no, party's smaller than they thought, cool, let's keep going. As opposed to stop, look, I'm sure he doesn't want to check to see if that a email, and it's not a standard email, so what does it say? Let me read the fine print. I just don't think that's valuable time spent from the sheriff.
I would just say to everyone, this is not a problem.
Thank you.
And this, the process works fine. We fax it to the sheriff. They put it into their database. So when the sheriff is patrolling, and realistically, this is the first complaint that we've received, other than maybe somebody. So I think we're creating more than it really is.
Starting to manage boat dock fees,
So
guys.
you don't need to deal with this until next year when she requests again.
Yeah.
Is that-
What are we
The
telling
only,
Well, no, what I'll tell her is the next time she requested, and, I think the lady was trying to be proactive by how many people put their
Just put a
phone
note
number
in
in
it,
there?
yeah.
So I think she was trying to be proactive. And, I know Mr. Collins had an issue, but 2 cars, I mean, that's, on the whole block, that's all there was. I mean,
Well, I think his concern, if you read the letter, is this going to be a regular thing? So I think if we said to him, I know Mr. Collins, I know.
and I told him
And
that.
if he says, if we say, listen, it was 1 day a year, I think he's a pretty reasonable man, and he's going to say, okay, that's all right. But if we say it is every holiday, then yeah, I'm with him. It's them parked by the.
Well, I'm going to schedule a party and park on 24.
There you go. What are you telling him? So what are you going to tell him?
No, I already told
You're
him.
talking, okay.
Yeah, I sent him an email and told him that it was it's just a function of, the condo having a party. And, I explained in the email, and he sent back and said, thank you. So I think it's a moot point.
I was gonna say, it was, my neighbors used to have a big party, and it was very helpful that they would come door to door and just say, hey, we're having a party, we're gonna be parking on the street tonight, that sort of thing, and it was kind of nice that they gave you a heads up, and you knew what was going on. So, because of this, when I'm looking, this is, one short stretch street, and they're close to Gulf Boulevard. I understand why you probably wrote the note, why you probably sent the email, because he's probably going to beachgoers or something, what's going on here, so.
Right.
the only problem we really have is holiday season when people park on both sides of the street and you can't get an ambulance down the street. That's an issue.
That we're not going to permit.
And the same thing happens at the yearly or 2-year.
Garage sale.
But now we're just allowing one side.
Right.
A related issue there, it's not the residents or my neighbors that concern me. Have you had any problems with these short-term rentals? First of all, short-term rentals are an issue, but I'm more concerned about the guys blowing into town and one night they have 30 of their best frat buddies over.
We haven't had a problem with that. For the most part, they're parking in the driveways. Actually, I think part of the pandemic has slowed that down. But, now, if it comes up and they do it multiple times, it's gonna not be a very good fine for them. So I don't think that's a problem. I think the way our system is, and, from now on, I'll just tell the people that, hey, if you're a resident on that street, you can get a parking thing. The condos can go to the marina. That's not a problem. And we have done that when they, like, start working out.
I'm sorry, we were at general business unless that, I think that concludes the issue unless you,
Yeah,
I would just have general business and
and I just got a couple things.
I have two fast things and go ahead.
When we reopened the beaches, we had a little diversion by the sheriff's office in the marina. I caught it and they got stopped. But what they did was they were going to make the marina a turnaround point. So if the traffic got too bad at Clearwater Beach, and my position was, and I took care of it, but my position, I just want you to know, was, wait a minute, you're taking my parking revenue to take care of something that could happen in Clearwater Beach. And I told them and they fixed it the very next day. So it happened, and they understood my point, and it got resolved, because we had a little issue with one of the people couldn't park in the marina. So, but that's taken care of. I sent you all a copy of a demand letter by email last week that we got for someone that fell in Morgan Park.
I saw that.
I didn't see that.
I didn't see that. Can you resend that, please?
Huh?
Can you resend that? I don't know that I saw that.
Huh? You didn't? Well,
I don't think I saw it in there.
I sent it. Patty would have sent it to you, because I always send it to her, but we'll verify that it went out. Well, some of you evidently got it. But this was a gentleman that fell a year ago, and
Wet sand guy.
yeah. Okay. But it was turned over to the League of Cities immediately. Fred and I had a discussion about it a week or so ago. He was here, and we had a discussion about it, because I didn't want to make it a public document, but this isn't a court case or anything. But the league is on it, and I've talked to the adjuster, and we'll see where it goes from there. The extension is going to be on your next agenda for 22nd Street. 65.2% recommended approval of that extension in EEI. I got the invoice this morning. I was going to put it on there with the email I had, but I got the invoice this morning. So it'll just be council approving me to pay Reeves invoice, which is the additional almost $47,000 they gave us a credit. And something I gave you at your table, this is the penny for funding. The county is looking for this document. Unless somebody has a problem with it, I'm just going to go ahead and send it. And it basically is outlining how we will spend the money that they give us for the undergrounding. Current thing, and I think the Big C is going to talk about this, because I think you've already
Meeting
told them.
next week?
Yeah, I think you've already told them that we're taking option 2.
Correct. I told them that we were selecting option 2, yeah.
So what the county's proposal is, and this was new to me, they're going to fess up with $3 million of the 35 next year, and then $8 million the following next 4 years. So they're looking for a proposal of how we're going to allocate and spend that. So this is just a proposal, and I know with the Gulf Boulevard money we got last time, it can shift and it can roll over. So we'll get whatever percentage of it is next year. We really won't have any expense, because we'd be getting cost estimates and start working on the easements that we may need. Because if those poles come down on the west side or east side of Gulf Boulevard, then we're going to have an easement back to the pole that's like Mayor, I don't know if you got a pole in your backyard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's in between both houses, yeah.
Okay, well, they're gonna have to underground back to that pole to get rid of that pole on Gulf
We
Boulevard.
already have an easement, 5 feet on each side. of the
Yeah,
lines.
well, Duke will come back with 530 feet, so. I know the drill, been through it. So I just wanted to let you know, if you don't have any problem with this, we'll just go ahead and send it to them. This is just a proposal.
No issues, everyone? No, go ahead.
Okay. And that's all I have.
I got 2 quick ones for you. It's budget season, and last year at this time, we reviewed all contracts. A lot of our contracts, obviously, are long-term. Garbage comes to mind, but we still have an opportunity when we're going through the budget to sit down and discuss them. We also have month-to-month contracts and or annual contracts. So this is when we did it last year, and I took great pains at tasking the other councils in the past for not doing this. I want to make sure we do it. So if you would please have one of your folks prepare the list of the contracts like we did last year, and then we can all take a look at it and make sure we're satisfied going forward. But this is the time to take a look at it. I know the police don't renew for later, but again, this is the time to talk about it because you need to know for your budget, what we're good with, what we're not good with, if there's anything.
Well, most of we went out on RFP last year for most of the contracts, so we don't have any really, the engineering and the garbage and things like that. The contract that would renew is the sheriff. There might be a couple others, but they're not major. The sheriff's already told us it's $503,000 for next year.
How much was it this year?
491. It's about 2.6%. It's yeah.
There's no, listen, I checked last year with Clearwater, and I know they've had a mayoral change up there, but they were the only ones that were close to us that were even a possibility. They weren't interested, so the sheriff is the sheriff and will be the sheriff. So, but we have to just talk, to do our due diligence. We need to speak about each contract. I mean, we have to do that once a year.
Yeah,
So let's go through a list and make sure we're all satisfied. We can pass through it probably pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think I gave you that list of the big contracts.
That's
Last
what you did, yes.
sheriff, the
Garbage. Well, the engineers, the attorney, the, I don't know what else you have, but any major contracts, we don't care about like pest extermination or something like that, but. bigger
No,
ones,
it's mainly the engineering contracts, it's a rollover because we just did that last year, this fiscal year. We just selected the engineers, so it'd be trash.
I don't think trash is expiring for a few more years though, but again, they use.
Just so you know what they are.
Right, and they use the force majeure. I just want to make sure, my neighbors love the refuse folks, they do a great job, but I mean, I don't know, you may have gotten complaints. This is the time for us, as we're doing the budget, to take a look at all of this stuff and see if there's any dissatisfaction on any of this stuff. I expect this is going to be a quick discussion, but I just wanted to alert you, this is when we did it last year, so we probably should do it again this year, it's a good time. The only other thing I had for you, Lynn, but it's council actually, is our state of emergency. It's been going now for 3 months. We really, thank God, haven't had to use it. I'm really happy that we didn't have to use it, but I don't know that it's necessary any longer.
No, I think July 6th will.
Okay, so let's, unless council has a reason, let's pull it down July 6th, okay? So let's do that.
That was my plan anyway,
That's fine.
to say,
We normally, I can bring it down and then we can ratify it, but I think we can just bring it down together.
Yeah.
There's no reason to add an extra step. That's fine.
yeah, we'll just do it July 6th.
That's all I had. Glenda?
Just moving forward, city manager reviewed the objectives, not a lot of discussion, but as everybody buying in, this is his direction, his short-term direction. So, these are the priorities and everybody's buying into it. And one question to the city manager, obviously the code review is a critical item, especially in terms of seawall stuff. So you have a timeline in mind for kicking off the code review?
Well, I think we need to do a little research up deeper on the seawall, and I need to talk to Rube. So we maybe August, September timeframe, I'm thinking. Because I'd rather get the background, so when we do whatever we do to the code, There's a couple other things we need to look at in the codes. Last time, trying to remember, Jody, you were on it, right?
Finished floor elevation of houses, I have an issue with still. The finished floor elevation of houses, I still have an issue with.
Well, I'm gonna,
The
That's-
pool deck, I have issues with,
we can,
with relation to the elevation of the crown of the road. That really makes not a lot of sense to me. So there's, yeah, some things, and I think we probably need to take a closer look at drainage and how people are treating runoff if they're building a new home.
and when you talk about the elevation, we're gonna have to put 1 foot of seaboard, freeboard. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, what it means is the elevation is 10 feet, we're gonna add a foot to it. We're gonna be required to do that for future building come January 1st anyway, so we're gonna have to change our ordinance.
An entire foot?
Yeah,
I mean, it's not unusual to add a couple of inches, but not a foot.
no, it's a foot. FEMA just came out with that. So,
All right.
and
Well, we
most,
have houses at below sea level. So, meanwhile, we have houses at below sea level. And FEMA will insure those, but not, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
They lowered
That's a
our
subject
heights,
for-
so.
well, hopefully they've lowered our heights. They haven't made.
Well, I know, they've been lowering them for the last 2 years, so.
Yeah, they haven't made it official. But, so our
It
benefit.
doesn't matter now, I'm built, I don't care. They didn't lower them when I was building.
I do have a question, so, streetlights, I know you said you're working on a streetlight plan, but meanwhile, who monitors streetlights? Because there's, I think I have all of 3 lights on Harrison Avenue and one of them is out, so it's really dark. When we lost a pole snap,
We don't,
we
you
never
know,
got the light
usually
replaced, so.
a resident will send us an email and tell us the street light is out.
I mean, there's one out on Harrison Avenue.
Okay. Where? Which one? 1, 2, or 3?
It's, the first one over, when you go over the bridge, the first one on the right.
Yeah, because we have to send that in automated.
I know you gotta get the number, and I don't know.
You don't need the number, I just need to know where it's at. Okay.
Anybody else? I'm trying to do this by 10 o'clock. Go ahead, Lauren, you got less than 15 minutes.
No, the bus stop seemed to move from Indian Rocks Beach back into Bel Air Beach at First Street, right at the border. It was down near where the real estate company is, and it's moved into Bel Air Beach again.
Yeah, actually it was moved further into Ballard Beach, and I told them to move it. They moved it 10 feet. So we'll have to tell them that.
And then just wondered, I know we got contracts, but could we increase the code enforcement contract a little bit? Get him for more hours or?
Well,
This is a discussion for another night,
I
but
think
I'm in
this is-
favor of revisiting code enforcement. I'll just leave it at that.
yeah, I think we have to have another discussion about that.
The other thing, if we're going to discuss, I mean, I know security can go in the shade, code enforcement, maybe check with Fred about putting it in the shade. We don't have to sit here and tell people how to enforce code, I don't think, but I'm not sure if that's both security or not, but we don't need to lay out a roadmap for people like, oh, we don't inspect on Sundays, we don't want to do that.
And Councilmember Gaddis about security, we've had a meeting about the camera stuff, so we're going to get some more information.
Again, if we do that, we keep it in the shade, because I think we had, one time we had one here and we were giving away security secrets, we don't want to be doing that, so.
I'm very, very concerned about doing anything in the shade, so, I mean, I'm not in favor of doing stuff outside the sunshine law.
It's within the sunshine law, it's an
Yeah.
exception, so. If that's why you do it, so it's in the sunshine law to permit, so that you don't give away your security secrets. But if you want to tell everybody where the buttons are, you can do that, and then they'll break in and take advantage of it. It's permitted, so have Fred just double check. I'm not sure that code is, security is code, I'm not sure.
I don't think code is,
I don't know that it is.
but we need to have a discussion.
Security is. Anyone else? Thank you, folks, this was a long meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Everyone? Aye?
Aye.
Have a good night, thanks for playing.